hold on. Nubia, can you hear us?
I can hear you guys.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Can you also see the presentation as well, Nubia?
I did see it up just a second ago. It's
Okay.
not on right now.
All right, I'll do it now.
Yeah, I just got sent a text that says that they can hear us.
Okay.
So excellent.
Maybe
Thank you.
I'll speak a little bit closer to the mic.
Thank you, Katie Dunn.
So just in case those of you in the public did not hear, again, this is day 2 of our goal setting session. Day 1 was on February 1st. Day 1 really encompassed reviewing a state of the city, going over the department reviews as far as accomplishments that have happened, as well as goals identified by each department head. And that's really to kind of highlight the capacity of the city of Sonora on behalf of your departments. After I go through the agenda here, I'm going to turn it over to our facilitator, Morgan Gacci. She's going to take us through an exercise of teamwork, high performance teamwork. And this is really to get us in the frame of mind to work collaboratively with goal setting and objective setting. Next, we're going to review the handouts that we asked council members to go through on day 1 of your goal setting session. And those were handouts 1 and 2. And those were listing accomplishments and challenges for the city of Sonora and identifying last year's accomplishments and challenges. After that, we're going to do a little departmental review and quiz. I asked each council member to come prepared and to review your PowerPoint and to review what your department heads presented to you so that you can feel confident in the quiz that we're going to present to you and understanding the capacity of the city overall. And then we'll go right into, again, reviewing what is a goal, what is objective. We know from day 1, there was a bit of miscommunication and misunderstanding the difference between what a goal and what an objective is. And so we're going to run through that as detailed as possible to make sure that everyone on the council has a thorough understanding of that. Then we'll take a quick break. And then we're going to go into reviewing the mission statement. And the reason we're doing this is because the mission statement actually identifies goals for the city of Sonora. And so we want to review that and potentially look at whether or not we want to utilize the Sonora mission statement as our 5 identifiable goals. And then lastly, we will go through the remainder and finalize your goals and objectives. So with that, I am going to allow Morgan to come up and present her teamwork session. Hold on, Morgan, get you going. Oh, come on, stop. That's not what I wanted. Oh, hold on a second. Let me reshare. Hold on just a second. All right. I don't know how it's going to stop split screen like that. I'm not too familiar. I present her view. Yeah. Oh. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Hold on. Can't wait for Zoom to be done. Okay, that should get you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mayor and City Council, for having me back, and to the residents of Sonora for joining us today. I'm excited to dialogue a little bit about teamwork, and I think it's a good way to launch us into identifying the goals and objectives that we're going to be creating for the City of Sonora today. And so, going in here, pardon me.
Seems like I'm an exercise for the day. Oh, let's see. There we go.
All right. So my mentor and a leadership expert, John Maxwell, that you may have heard of before. He says, for the person trying to do everything alone, the game really is over. If you want to do something big, you must link up with others. We wanted to start today's session talking about teamwork because the accomplishment for the city of Sonora doesn't come just from one person alone. It comes through collective effort of the council, of department heads and staff of the city, and it comes from the constituents and private partnerships that you have. So it's a teamwork collaboratively here in Sonora. The 17 Indisputable Laws of Teamwork is a book that John Maxwell wrote, and I'm just extracting a few points in there to kind of start the conversation. The first law that he references is the law of significance, which basically states one is too small a number to achieve greatness. Some of us love being on a team. We love interacting and working collaboratively, but not everyone works easily in a group. And there's a few different reasons for that. Lyndon Johnson said, there are no problems we cannot solve together, and very few that we can solve by ourselves. So why is it then that we still want to do things by ourselves and avoid collaboration? So first identifiable could be the ego. So most of us struggle with the idea that we cannot do it alone. Andrew Carnegie wrote, it marks a big step in your development when you come to realize that other people can help you do a better job than you could do it alone. It could be insecurity for some of us. Insecure leaders usually fail to build teams because of two things. They either want to maintain control over everything, or they fear they'll be replaced by someone that's potentially more capable. But possibly it's naivety. So some leaders underestimate the difficulty of accomplishing goals, and so they try to go at it alone. And then lastly, it could be temperament. So if you're familiar with personality assessments such as DISC or others, they identify some people just tend to gravitate more towards working individually. And so it could be based on a temperament. Another law that John Maxwell identifies is the law of the big picture, stating that the goal is more important than the role. So how do we transition from I to we thinking? One of the ways is, I want to actually look at the graphic here that we see for just a moment. We have someone that's a little bit in the weeds, and we use this phrase a lot, that someone's stuck in the weeds, because it's difficult sometimes to see above and get the trajectory of the $40,000 bird's eye view, 40,000 foot bird's eye view. So imagine if you have someone that's an excellent grass cutter. They're weed whacking away and they're going full force. It's challenging if the weeds are too high to identify which direction they need to go. Where's the fence line? Where's the road that we need to cut to? And so it's the goal of working collaboratively and having someone that can get up in the trees and potentially see that bird's eye view to identify where we are in fact going. So first we need to look at the big picture. It starts with having a crystal clear vision and an end goal. So that's partly what we're doing today. We're identifying those goals and we're clarifying with objectives. So in our case, 5 specific goals. The second one is sizing up the situation. So once that vision is clear and we know where we want the city to go, it's time to recognize the gap of where we are to where we want to be. Then we need to line up the needed resources. Resources for your team, the staff, all the departments here, to allow them to be able to effectively achieve those goals that we're identifying. We need to call up the right players, having the right people in the right seats. You can lose with the right players, but you cannot win with the wrong ones. If you were to attempt to achieve our 2021 goals by yourself, it would be a daunting task, but collaboratively together, we will be able to achieve it. Transitioning from I to we thinking also requires us to give up personal agendas. Successful teamwork means consistently asking ourselves what's best for the rest. Ray Kroc, who is the founder of McDonald's, he said, no one of us is more important than the rest of us. And then stepping up to a higher level. Once we're able to set our personal agendas aside, the team can operate at a truly higher level, allowing us to fill the mission of making Sonora the best place to live, work, and play. So another one that John Maxwell identifies is the law of the scoreboard, saying that the team can make adjustments when it knows where it stands. Now, this may seem like common sense, but being able to identify clearly snapshots in the moment allows us to make that needed traction going forward. So thinking about Super Bowl 2017, we had the Atlanta Falcons and we also had the New England Patriots playing. I don't know if any of you guys recall, at that time, halftime, the Patriots were down 3-21 with the Falcons. The Falcons were in a big lead. And at that time, Bill Belichick had a halftime speech, and I just want to share his quote. He said, it's going to take more than 21 points to defeat us today. So we have not lost yet. Understand it will take more than 21 points. We'll score more than that. The question is, can you hold them so we can score those points and have the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history? Anybody remember what happened? It's been a few years. What ended up happening is they walked out fired up, with ultimately winning the Super Bowl and having the understanding that they made the appropriate adjustments because they knew where they stood. Atlanta Falcons, they didn't make the appropriate adjustments. They had the lead, but they ended up losing the game. So with the law of the scoreboard, the team can make adjustments when it knows where it stands. The scoreboard is essential to doing the following. It's essential to understanding. So at any given time, it allows for that snapshot to gain understanding on what has been done and what has yet to be done. Evaluating. We've heard the saying growth equals change. And if we want to become better and do more, we have to change in the right direction. It's kind of like bowling without the pins. We can be working really hard and throwing balls all day long and not know where we stand. Decision-making. In football, the quarterback uses the information on the scoreboard to assess what the next play is. And then adjusting. As we all know, achieving goals is not a simple A to B path. Sometimes it's A to Z. Case in point, COVID-19. I think a year ago, if we had this session, then obviously it would be a very different year than what you were expecting. And then winning. When we arrive at December 31, 2021, and reflect over the course of the last year, we'll recognize the power of utilizing this scoreboard and setting and goal achieving. All right, so we're gonna have Mary Rose come back up.
Okay, if you could all take out your handouts from day one, the accomplishments and challenges. And I really wanted us to kind of talk about those. And let's start out with the accomplishments. And I'm going to ask each council member if they will please read their 2 accomplishments that they identified. And then at the end, after we've read it, if we just kind of want to talk about whether or not we identified the same, how we identified differently, and so forth. So if Councilmember Sagerstrom, if you wouldn't mind identifying the 2 accomplishments that you thought for the last calendar year of 2020. Yes.
Accomplishment one was the cannabis ordinance as a much needed source of revenue. And accomplishment two was the social equity conversation and formation of the social equity committee.
Right, perfect, thank you. And Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Plummer, if you wouldn't mind reading yours.
Thank you, Jody. Oh, we found a city administrator and can claim some title to the accomplishments that you have achieved, updating our technology and some of our bureaucracy and different processors. So that, I think, is probably our most significant accomplishment for the city, for the well-being of the city. And then the second one was that we stayed relatively close to in the black financially in an extremely trying year. And that, I think, is terribly important and gives us a lot more leeway or latitude for going forward.
Thank you. Mayor?
The cannabis ordinance is definitely a success. And then also the technology that we literally accomplished right before the end of 2020 here in City Hall. That's something we couldn't have accomplished in 20 years. We did through coordinating with the county.
Member Such?
The ballot. Two successful ballot measures.
Just for clarification for the public, that's your TOT ballot measure and also your appointment. City clerk and city treasurer.
Correct. And also, I think, Mary Rose, your invitation for us to participate in League of Cities, I think that's been a really important addition to our lives.
Thank you. And Councilmember Garaventa.
So I actually had one written down, but I borrow from someone for my second. And the first one I had was modernizing the functionality of the city through technology upgrades and purchases. And the second one, I think, is remaining solvent under the COVID crisis, being able to have enough have enough in reserve and be able to budget well when we have poor revenues and may in the future. So I think the solvency is a key thing, key accomplishment.
Thank you so much. And Morgan, because I know you've been taking notes, would you mind just kind of identifying the ones that were the same, identified as the same goals? Because we want to make sure that we're looking at things, that we're seeing things the same through the council members. I mean, obviously we're going to have different opinions, but to be able to identify our goals and objectives, we want to be able to come to agreement where we do see accomplishment and we do see challenges. So I believe that we did have overlapping. So the cannabis ordinance, we did have overlapping. We did have multiple council members identify that as a great accomplishment. Technology was also an additional accomplishment that was identified by multiple council members. New staff. Oh, and new staff positions, additional expansion of staff capacity. So now that we've identified the accomplishments, we really want to look at the challenges. And I'm hoping that you listened in to your department heads when they spoke, and also myself in addressing the state of the city from day one. And if you would, we're going to start here with Councilmember Garaventa this time. If you would mind reading your challenges that you identified.
So the two challenges I had, the first one is the need to enhance the community development department and rebuild economic development efforts in the post-COVID world. And the second one is build the relationship between the city and the state agencies and legislature through via the League of California Cities and the Motherlode Cities Group to help achieve more funding and mandate relief.
Yeah, that's going to be a big one.
Yep.
Councilmember Such, if you're ready. Okay, I will go to the mayor. Mayor Hawkins.
Our biggest challenges, holy moly. One of our biggest challenges is our aging infrastructure. We've been talking about it for over a decade now, which is our city's main drain, but there are other things that go along with that. And then the funding for different things we need in the city without raising taxes, you know, things like new police cars, fire equipment, that sort of thing. Public works, I mean, we've been using some things in public works since the 1950s. So we have definitely been good stewards of everything that we've have and that we use. So, but those I think are two of our bigger challenges.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Plummer?
Wait for my cute little green light. So, okay, I think economic development is, that was my challenge number one. And that would be to develop a plan and infrastructure for long-term, high-value business growth, along with better support for our existing businesses. And that is relating, of course, to revenue and opportunity for our children. So, challenge number two, the homeless. How to lower the number of homeless and discourage immigration from outside the county, and then to meet our legal requirements so we don't have them, say, camping on Courthouse Park. That's it.
All right, Councilmember Segerstrom?
Requirements for
Yes,
housing.
you did
I
say legal
okay,
requirements,
I was
yes.
thinking that maybe I left out the housing part, would leave the sentence pretty vague.
Councilmember Segerstrom?
I also identified infrastructure, and in particular, traffic control and residential parking. And then my second challenge, with my communications background, is I really feel that the city and council communication with our residents is lacking, and there's no esprit de corps. I think it's underdeveloped, and we can work harder on communicating with our residents.
All right, and I'm gonna look to Morgan to see if we had any overlap of those challenges. Oh, excuse me, Councilmember Such, I'm sorry.
For me, it's lack of fire resiliency, and ability to protect our town in case of fire, and also our homeless, on our ongoing lack of solution to the homelessness in our unhoused community. That's it.
Okay, any overlap in those? So infrastructure, so we're just looking at the overlap. So again, trying to find where we're seeing that the council members are meeting together with identifiable accomplishments and now challenges. So infrastructure was identified by multiple council members as a challenge. And economic development. And I'm sure that's going to be something that's going to be talked about a lot when we get into the goals and the objectives. But yes, you know, that is something that we've talked about quite a bit, especially with the dissolving of the TCEDA, or the not quite dissolving, but the closing of the TCEDA, and where does the city go from there with that. So thank you so much for taking the time. That really does get our minds going about, you know, even though we were in a COVID year, a very stressful year, and we're still in an additional COVID year, we were still able as a city to accomplish quite a bit. As a small city with a reduction in revenues, we were still able to accomplish. And you know, some of the things that you guys addressed was the cannabis ordinance, the social equity committee, and so forth. Those were major accomplishments as we look back at the year. So going forward, when we look at those challenges, we want to make sure that we keep those challenges in the back of our mind as we look at how we want to set forth the goals and the objectives. So again, just to kind of get our minds going, I wanted to see if how much the council members retained from your department heads when they presented their state of their departments. And so we're going to do a little bit of a quiz. So I am going to, Morgan's going to go ahead and pass out a sheet for you. Yeah, I got it. Also, Jody. It is open book, but we're going to go through them. It is going to be timed. So, and this is just a little background of Morgan again before we get going. But so we wanted to make sure how much you remembered from day one. So the first question for you, number one, list all, let me make sure I get close here. List all the divisions of the Sonora's Administrative Services Department. So as you recall, Chris Gorski is your Administrative Services Director, and he has multiple departments underneath him with a staff of about 3. So we want to make sure that we identify the capacity of administrative services. So let's look at how many divisions you can list of his department. And then just kind of let me know once you're finished, and we'll move on to the number 2 one. Okay, and then moving on, how many employees are allocated to our illustrious Public Works Department? And I always think of Public Works as our unsung heroes, right? Because they are really the backbone of us. They're out of the public view, like your fire and your police, but when we talk about public safety, they really are hand in hand with our police and our fire. So we want to make sure we give credit to those guys. We did have a change, if you remember. One of your Public Works employees has since moved to your Administrative Services Department. So it's kind of a little catch for you. If you could identify that it is in your packet under Public Works, the number of employees we have in Public Works. They're under, yeah, your community. If you look at Rochelle's presentation, she talks about, because Rochelle is technically your director of Public Works, although I'm not looking at Rochelle as part of Public Works at this point. So it'd be everybody underneath Rochelle as your Public Works department. And then I'll just move along, and then when we're finished, we can go through them one by one. True or false? The Community Development Department secured a SB2 funding grant in the amount of $259,000 to overhaul and update Sonora's municipal code. So think back in Rochelle's presentation and whether or not she identified this as an accomplishment for one of her accomplishments for community development. And then number 4 is list one goal identified by the fire chief for your Sonora's fire department. Your fire chief had a pretty lengthy list of goals, which really is Amy's personality, right? She usually sets the bar pretty high. So if you can recall any of the goals that she mapped out, again, it's in your PowerPoint. You could just list one. And then the last question is in regards to your police department. And I know we kind of had a little bit of a dialogue with this one, so hopefully we'll remember it. What would the primary focus be to establish a 501c3 Friends of the Sonora Police Department? And I'm just going to take a little bit of time for you guys to finish that up. And then we will go through them. And again, this is just to help you review and think back about the presentations made on behalf of your department heads. Or I don't know if you want to hold on to him until we call him out. What do you think? Why don't you just hold on to him, and we will, whoever wants to answer first before we give the answer. Okay. I see Anne still working. We'll go ahead and go through it, Anne, just for the sake of time. So does anybody want to give the answer for the divisions within the Administrative Services Department under your director, Chris Gorski? Go ahead, Colette.
Personnel, IT, finance, obviously, fleet management. Those are the only 4 I can
Yep.
remember.
Yeah, so he actually has 5 divisions under him.
Oh.
his biggest division, I would say by far, is your finance. Finance is Chris, although we really kind of tag team budget, but all else, finance, everything is Chris. And he does have a finance assistant, but the majority of all of your state reports and everything come directly just through Chris. Human resources as well, personnel. We do have an additional employee that works with Chris to do to help out with human resources. We have an administrative analyst. I also kind of tag team that as well. But human resources is under Chris. Risk management, that's a big division of him as well. Information technology, as we all know, this has been a big one for us this year. All the upgrades that we've been doing, that's from Chris's leadership. So thank you, Chris, on that. And he also now oversees fleet management. That was the one public works position that has since shifted. And this is to really, Chris is really well with vehicles and managing of vehicles. So we wanted to have that one employee now underneath Chris where he can get really good interaction in developing a fleet management plan and get our police and other vehicles up to snuff really from a fleet management perspective. So we're going to be working heavily on that this coming year. So question number two was how many employees we have in Public Works. Anybody want to shout it out?
6.
You're correct. We have 6 employees. You have Public Works Supervisor, Mark Lego Marcino, and then we have 3 Public Works Specialists and 2 Public Works Assistant. We are in the process of hiring an assistant as we speak. So right now we're only down to 5 employees that manage all of your facilities, your roads, all of that from Public Works. So they do a really great job, even with limited staff. I will, again, just kind of reiterate the fact that this department did take a hit, after, during the recession, they did lose employees. We have not regained those employees, so they are working still with a limited number of staff.
So while we're on this subject, the system mechanic, has that either A, been frozen, B, not been?
If you recall from your budget last June, we froze that position. We could not fund it.
But if it were to come back, it would come under fleet management.
It would come under fleet management, yes. Okay. So we have picked up other ways to alleviate that stress. So we've done contracts with local shops where the assistant would generally do that type of work, such as your oil change and so forth. But that was a position that was frozen. As you recall, we did freeze 2.5 FTEs in recommended budget. Yes.
To the recession, are you speaking about the 2008, 2010 recession?
Yep.
So it's been a little while.
So it's been a while. So we have not, community development, Public Works, pretty much all your departments, but your community development and your Public Works were your hardest hit ones. Okay, number 3 was, the true and false. The true and false. Anybody want to get a guess on that? The community development SB2 grant? True or false? It is true. And actually, yeah. So this was, yeah. So we, a lot of our departments write grants to do our everyday work, which generally general fund usually picks that up. But being a small city that we are, we've had to rely heavily on grants. As you probably hear a lot of the fire department coming up, your police department coming up for grant writing. Municipal code, that is a, we have to maintain legally the municipal code. And right now it is in desperate need of an overhaul and an update. That is going to be through a technology project. We've been talking about that through MuniCode, who does our agenda management. They are also going to be overhauling our municipal code as well, so that the public, it makes it a lot more transparent and engaging for the public. So if they're searching for codes, they're going to be right there available. They can search, they can look at past. It's going to be great. Then something we have to do. So yes, thank you, Rochelle. She did secure that grant for us, and Rochelle and Jody right now are working on that overhaul of our municipal code. So that will get going and hopefully finalized here by the end of this calendar year. It's a big project, big project. So your number 4 was identify a goal. Oops, sorry, Swift. She had a lot. So I'm sorry, I kind of shifted through it, but the fire department had a lot of goals that they identified. And you know, when Amy comes with us for grants, she always talks about this is what we're trying to, you know, secure with this grant. And so you'll see there, you know, securing additional AFG grants. She's been talking about completing, you know, SOPs, and looking at updating processes such as, you know, reviewing and updating employee evaluation process. And fleet keeps coming up, revising the fleet replacement recommendation. And that's something that we are going to be working with Chris to kind of look at it citywide, because all of our fleet needs to come under that umbrella of one central fleet management program. But yes, Amy does have quite a bit. And so she also had quite a bit of accomplishments as well. So the last one is, can anybody identify what the primary focus of establishing a 501c3 Friends of the Sonora Police Department?
Special projects like bike patrol, K9, stuff like that.
Yes, that's correct. So it was to fundraise, but the primary focus on special projects such as your K9 unit for the police department. We've talked about that, and it is quite common for law enforcement agencies to have an arm. It's a fundraising arm, because we, as a city, we can't really be fundraising on behalf of the government. So you want to have that ability to have a 501c3 to fundraise and to provide additional revenue streams for special projects. Okay, so thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it. It was just a little refresher. And now at this time, I'm going to have Morgan come back up, and she's going to take us through what are goals and what are our objectives at this point. Put your PowerPoint back up, Morgan. All right.
Okay, well, on our last session, we tried to combine a whole lot in a very short amount of time. Maybe not so short, but it was too short in trying to explain the goals and our objectives. And pardon me, okay. So our goals and objectives, what is a goal? And we talked about this before, and we want to gain clarity because it's important as we identify what we talked about before as what are the overarching goals, and then defining what those objectives are. So first, a goal is an idea of the future or desired result that a person or a group of people envision, plan, and commit to achieve. Setting goals is critical for every organization because goals determine the broad vision and the direction for the organization. And the best goals that we have are going to align with the city's mission, our vision, and our culture. So they describe the city's long-term aspirations before laying out those specific actions and priorities. So just as a recap, goals are, in their simplest form, broad in nature. They're valuable for setting a general direction or a vision. They can be difficult to measure. They're abstract ideas. They're longer term, and they produce the end result. So we're going to test your knowledge again. Another quiz, yay. All right. So here's the first question. Which of the following best fit the description of a health goal? Would it be A, drink at least 64 ounces of water per day? Would it be B, make my health a daily priority? Or would it be C, no eating past 8 p.m.? Anybody have an idea? B, okay. Good job, you are right. So A and C are very specific. They're easy to measure, and that would fit as more of an objective, but the goal is very broad. And making my health a daily priority, it doesn't itemize what that looks like, but it is the goal, the overriding goal. So let's try another one. Which of the following best fit the description of a city goal? Would it be A, Establish emergency fire safety protocols that integrate with county and state preparedness? Would it be B, create a safe and healthy community? Or would it be C, make the city more fire safe, resilient? What would be the best description of a city goal? So if we were looking at goals and objectives, you're correct. It would be D, all of the above. We're identifying the broader term goal, which is correct. It's going to be B, which is creating a safe and healthy community. So now that we know that goals are more broad, let's talk about what objectives are. And we have a visual that you're going to see here on the screen, and you're going to see that repeated because we want to reference that. Now, it sounds a little confusing because these are called SMART goals. And when in fact, they're actually identifiable for objectives that we're using. So when we look at a SMART way to refine what our objectives are, we know that it's specific, the goal is direct, it's detailed, and it's meaningful. It's measurable, which means the goal is quantifiable. We can track that progress, hence the scoreboard that we referenced in the teamwork workshop. It's attainable. So your goal is realistic and you have the tools and the resources to attain it. It's relevant. So our goal aligns with the company or the city's mission. And T is time sensitive, time-based. It has a deadline. So measurable, specific actions. When we gave those examples before, we had the broader term goals that seem very broad, but then we had some more specific. Objectives are more specific, and they're often planned and carried out on a shorter term basis. So we're going to try this again. We're going to test your knowledge this time with objectives. So which of the following best describe a financial objective? The best description. A, save money. B, get out of debt. Or C, automatically transfer 10% of every paycheck into my savings account. C? Those would be probably more broader goals, but yes, automatically transfer 10% of every paycheck into my savings account is very specific, it's measurable. I know that 10% out of every single paycheck is going in, and that would fit the SMART goal. So let's try with the city now. Which of the following best describe a city objective? A, plan for the future of our community and enhancement of our quality of life. B, implement a continuous recruiting program for police and develop innovative and customized marketing strategies for recruiting new and lateral officers. Or C, stimulate economic prosperity for our community. Any ideas? The second one? Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty specific. Now, it could be maybe more measurable, and that could be something we can influence, but I wanted to pull something from our potential objectives here. So yes, B would be the best fit for a city objective. All right.
So we were actually scheduled to take a break here, but I think since we haven't even reached the hour mark, I think we can go ahead and continue on and take a break as needed. Probably maybe halfway, Mayor, maybe in the 2 hour going in, maybe take a break when we hit the 2 hour mark. So coming off of day one and reviewing what was discussed in day one as far as setting of the goals, and understandably, because we were a little bit rushed there at the end, we did not, and I apologize, have the opportunity to really discuss the difference between what a goal and objective was. And Morgan and I kind of apologize that we weren't able to do a broader understanding so that the council members could thoroughly understand what a goal was. One of the ways that we would like to see if we can help out as far as creating goals through the efficiency of this 4-hour session, and to also rely on what has already been established and approved by previous city councils, is to take a look at the current mission statement of the city of Sonora. And I'll read it for you. We commit to partner with the community to provide quality services that, 1, create a safe and healthy community, 2, provide stewardship for our financial resources, 3, stimulate economic prosperity for our community, 4, promote our historical and cultural heritage, and 5, plan for the future of our community enhancement of our quality of life. And the reason I'm bringing this up is the city of Sonora has actually identified through this mission statement 5 goals. Those are 5 very well written goals that are currently approved as the city of Sonora's mission statement. And Morgan and I wanted to pose to the council. I know we had started the exercise of identifying city goals from scratch. And I know that the council members really want to get down to the nitty gritty, which is to look at the objectives and the work priority for staff. But we wanted to ask whether or not, and Morgan, would you mind passing that out again? Whether or not the council members would be agreeable to allowing the mission statement to stand as your 5 identifiable goals for the city of Sonora. Now, when you look at your objectives that were identified early on in the process, the objectives that were identified by council members can fit. All the objectives that were identified by the council members can fit into these categories. The only one that was not identified really by a council member was promoting historical and cultural heritage. I would argue that some of the social equity things that we've been talking about really would fit under that when we take a look at what does it mean to promote our historical and cultural heritage. Does it mean that we're including an inclusive community that goes back and looks at all of the elements of the cultural heritage of the city of Sonora? So those are things that we can definitely address when we talk about promoting our historical and cultural heritage. But from a staff perspective, and ensuring that we are still utilizing the mission that is formally adopted and approved by the city council of the city of Sonora, the mission statement does already provide for 5 goals. And so at this time, I would like to entertain any questions, comments on whether or not city council members would like to utilize these as our 5 goals. And then once these are established as the 5 goals, to work under those 5 goals to bring forth our objectives for the remainder of the session. So again, looking at these different 5 goals and identifying about 3 objectives underneath each of these goals going forward for the remainder of this session. Any comments or questions in regards to that?
You know, looking at everything, the city of Sonora's mission statement has been put together over the last probably 40, 50 years and refined over the years. So I don't have a single issue with it. I know the last meeting like this we had, I mean, quite frankly, it was somewhat embarrassing, some of the comments I got, quite frankly, that we couldn't work together. And I know all of us seem to get along up here pretty well, but it came across to the public like we couldn't get along and couldn't get together on at least setting some goals or priorities for the city. And all of us need to remember we are public servants. We're public servants that don't get paid for all the work we do. I know every single council member up here does a lot more work. I'm happy to be here, and I believe everybody else is also. So I guess what I'm trying to say in a long roundabout way is, you know, the mission statement has been put forward for many years. I think this is what we need to do to base our objectives off of. So, I mean, if anybody else has any other comments, but again, I think this is gonna make it so we can all kind of get along and work together. So we're not having arguments over, I don't know, sustainability, environmental friendly, all this sort of thing, when the reality is we just need to do the work of the people, plain and simple. So.
Well, I would support this proposition to use our mission statement just because it saves us a lot of time worrying or trying to recreate goals that pretty well exist already. And then we can worry about the details that do interest us probably a lot more than the long-term goals in the rubric described, because we want to get down to projects that we feel are essential. And I think this is a good proposition to move ahead.
Any other council members like to comment?
I just think that some of the goals that we identified are here. I mean, this is actually, wasn't really a goal that isn't in alignment with this already.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's great, personally.
Of a goal that you provided.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, oops. Yeah, all our can I even talk? All our objectives can fit underneath all 5 of these goals if we put them up as goals. So I have no problem using these instead.
Okay. Do we want to take a vote? I mean, it's already an approved mission statement, but I don't know if the council wants to take a formalized vote that these will be the 5 goals that will set the roadmap for at least 2021.
Do you need a motion to do that? I mean,
I-
would it be easier for you in implementing these goals? to
Yeah,
have
and
a
I think
motion?
we want to make sure we take any public comment as well,
Yeah, of
if we're
course.
going to do that. And I
Sure.
want to make sure that Nubia is, I'm going to stop sharing for a second, Jody, so we can get, hold Nubia. Nubia, this is an approved mission statement. However, the council would like to be able to provide that these will be the goals that govern the city council. Do we need an official vote on this?
We don't, because it's part of the whole goal setting, but consensus would be required. And you're right, we should take public comment on it. So as long as there's a consensus and we establish that those are going to be the goals moving forward, you're okay.
Okay, so let's make sure we take public comment. I'm understanding from all council members that the consensus is these are going to be, the mission statement goals are going to be the 5 goals that we will utilize going forward to establish our objectives. Yes? Yes, okay, great. So at this time, let's take some public comment. Jody, if you would please give the instructions for public comment and go through that.
For Zoom, you will need to use the raise your hand function, which is *9, and to unmute yourself is *6. And I see one hand raised, Darren Duez.
Go ahead, Darren.
I just want to say thank you guys. I actually see some of the stuff that you guys do in the background a lot more than the average city person does. And I know how hard you all work to actually get stuff accomplished. And I just want to thank you guys because I don't think people understand how much work goes into what you guys really do. I think that's it for me.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, at this time, I don't see any other additional public comment. So we have established our goals. So now with that, we will start working on objectives. And what Morgan and I did, and just to help all the council members out, is looking at those 5 identifiable goals of the mission statement. We tried to put under your objectives that would fall under those different goals. So some can be, you know, we talk about safe and healthy community. And let me go grab mine. So creating a safe and healthy community. There are things that can overlap between a safe and healthy community and also planning for the future of our community, enhancement of our quality of life. So when we think about that, try to compartmentalize where you want to show the differences between those 2 goals. Because a safe and healthy community can also address aging infrastructure, but so can planning for the future of our community and enhancement of our quality of life. And I know that was talked about at length with all council members when we looked at those objectives. So at this point, we're going to start in with the objectives, and we're going to be looking at the create a safe and healthy community. You want to get going on that one? You want your PowerPoint back up? Where are you? Right here. All right. Okay.
Okay, so just a really quick recap as you're looking at the new handout that you have. We are looking for objectives to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So the question becomes, as a council, what 3 objectives are you going to choose for creating a safe and healthy community? So what we'd like you to do is look at that first item on the first page and spend the next few minutes looking over the objectives and identify, and perhaps it's easier for you to cross out ones that aren't as important to you, but we want you to identify your top objective underneath create a safe and healthy community. Yeah.
So, short question. The second item here is ensure and support law enforcement and fire department staffing. Is that more goal than objective? Well, it's not very specific, and that in itself isn't very measurable. But I would see that as something that we all probably want, but then we'll have specifics underneath it where we say these are the specifics.
So what we can do with that, so these were identified at a previous
Right.
session, right, from all the council members. And so this is 2 sessions prior to having a more clear concept of what objectives are. So that being said, if there is a further way to make it more smart, then we can identify those and make it more measurable, make it more specific, but still fitting within the confines of that objective, if that makes sense.
I think so. I mean, that would be my number 1 of my 3. But-
Okay.
So, but it, like I say, it doesn't meet the SMART criteria exactly.
But we can always rewrite it to make the SMART criteria,
Okay,
because
good.
this was written
Okay.
before a true understanding of what the SMART criteria was.
Okay.
And at this time, would you mind if I stop sharing the
Okay.
screen and allow them to watch so that the public can see?
You bet.
Is that okay? So we're going to try to make sure that the public can see the interactions going on with the council instead of just the PowerPoint. So if you would be willing just to follow along with the PowerPoint that's presented in front of you, that way the public can see kind of what I'm writing and see the interactions going on. I can't understand you. The public can see though. Oh, got it. Not right now because they're viewing it. Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah, got it. We know it's a lot. We know it's a lot to read through, so we'll give you another minute or 2 to organize your thoughts. And remember, we're just picking one priority right now. Your main priority. Well, I know you want to say something, Mayor Pro Tem Plummer.
Well, that's, yeah, not so much that I need to say something, but basically come the first issue, even though there are 12.5 different objectives, they almost all come under 3 rubrics, which is police, fire and different responses to fire, and then homelessness and how to deal with that. So I'd lumped in mine when I was doing it at home, everything together when it was in one area.
That's a good point to make if we want to, when you discuss it with your council members, if you want to look at it differently like that.
You know, police and fire, I mean, that's under a safe and healthy community, but long-term disaster preparedness, which in this case, most certainly is, you know, a fire emergency, comes under plan for the future. So, but they're both fire related.
Right?
So can you do that?
We could. I would urge you though, because we have quite a bit of objectives to kind of hone in on one specific objective underneath the goal. Personally, I think it would fit in better with safe and healthy communities, because you can be planning for the future of your community with a safe and healthy community. And we all know disaster preparedness is extremely needed for a safe and healthy community. Just my personal take on that, but it's whatever you want to present, Councilmember Sagerstrom. Well, and you know, we're just going to kind of throw these out there. And again, these are objectives or priorities, if you will, that were identified prior to us really going through the in-depth analysis of what an objective really is. So we're probably going to have to be doing crafting of a lot of the language as we go through. Your number one, you personally as the Councilmember Sagerstrom, your number one priority that you would like to see under a safe and healthy community. And that is because we really don't want to have more than 3 objectives underneath a goal, because then we start getting too heavy for staff to have any capacity to follow up and to attain those goals. So we're going to start out identifying one priority from each council member, and there might be overlap. I'm hoping for overlap. And then that way we can look at additional priorities as we go down.
So
Yes.
I can start off with a real simple one,
Okay.
but extremely important, given our crime and fire resiliency and all of that. Ensure and support law enforcement and fire department staffing.
Okay. So that we would have to craft that language a little bit more to make it a true objective, but I'm going to put it down and see what the other council members think about that. But I'll put that up, but knowing that we're going to have to craft it a little bit differently.
First foremost objective.
Is the part about replacing the essential public safety equipment that goes along with that. You can have 100 police officers, but if there's only 1 car to get there, or 100 firefighters and there's only 1 truck to get there, it's you know, they have to walk everywhere. So that goes along with that.
Mr. Mayor, I think what we're going to do is end up with some of these statements as sort of vague, and then incorporate some of the other wish list items underneath it, probably just to make them workable. No?
No, because you start adding objectives onto objectives, you start expanding the scope of an objective, and you really don't want to be doing that. Anybody else would like to identify a priority?
Well, mine would be pretty much along the same lines. I mean, we have to have public safety staffing and make sure it's a stable force, stable funding. And I might add, you might want to just add staffing and resources to it, because like you said, if you don't have the car to patrol, you don't have the fire truck to get to the fire. you have to have the equipment as well. So I think it's a double-edged sword. I think they go together.
It really goes to both agencies, the fire and police department, both, they do take very good care of their vehicles. Like there's something to be said. I've seen a lot of cities where the officers and the firefighters do not take very good care of their vehicles, and they run them hard and they don't seem to care. And our city really takes pride in taking care of our stuff. Yes, we do.
Any? Councilmember Such or Segerstrom?
I would like to explore all opportunities to provide best practice and dignified solutions to our growing homeless population. It's halfway down page 2. It's the fifth bullet.
Do you want us to take us off co-host so they public can see me writing?
And Councilmember Segerstrom?
I agree that law enforcement and fire departments are fundamental to our community's sense of safety and well-being. So I would also agree with the staffing and resources behind law enforcement and fire department.
Now, because we have so many that have stacked up on the same issue, what we can identify are different pieces of that. And so now that we've identified that we have explore opportunities to provide best practices and dignified solutions to our growing homeless population and low income housing needs. So we've identified that as one of the objectives for creating a safe and healthy community. And then specifically with our law enforcement and fire department. And so as a broader scope. And so what we can do is begin a dialogue a little bit about the specific things. I know Mayor Hawkins, you referenced a couple pieces. And so I want to open up the floor to kind of talk a little bit more about what specifically under our emergency services that you want to explore for an objective.
I guess. I pushed the button. I mean, with both the fire and the police, it's simply staffing. I know with recent events, it's been a little easier for us to attain police officers because we're considered a very police officer friendly community. But it goes along the lines of public safety. So how would we be able to better retain and acquire good law enforcement and good, firefighter personnel? I know the chief and I have talked a lot. I can't wait to talk to the lieutenant. But I know that the chief and I have discussed a lot of different options, and a lot of times it's simply, things we do up here other than just having cars and going to calls. It's possibly having a SWAT team or having, a dog, canine unit. I know that some officers will go to communities where there's a lot of horseback or, bicycle officers. I don't know if that's even really an option up here for a bicycle, but, it's something I think we need to look at.
So one of the things when we talk about ensuring adequate staffing is how having adequate staffing, what is keeping the city of Sonora having adequate staffing. And that's something an objective can really point to. When we identify, kind of a revolving door sometimes of people coming in and out, we kind of view ourselves as kind of a training ground and then people moving on. One of the things we talk about is, pay scale. We know that our pay is significantly less than other jurisdictions. Do we have an adequate recruiting and retention policy for our police, and what does that look like? So when we talk about just ensuring that we have adequate staffing for both law enforcement and fire, we have to get to the cusp of, well, why is it inadequate at this point? And is there capacity within the city of Sonora right now to ensure that we have adequate staffing? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
We are playing by the rules and objectives that we identified some 6 weeks ago.
Yep.
And so that really is, we're pushing the square peg into the hole, so to speak. Is there any reason that we can't also include in that, since it seems to be pretty widespread as our first objective, with adequate equipment or to funding of the equipment and other needs for those departments?
So I'm not saying anything against your objective. What I'm trying to get the council to understand is when we take a look at the capacity of the city, what is not allowing the city to have adequate, because we know that they are understaffed at this point from the recession. So currently, what would be an objective to ensure that we have adequate staffing? What is the crux of the problem at this point? And that's kind of a staff thing, because we need to go back. Yes.
Better, more funding.
Yeah.
Funding.
It's the funding. So we have to remember. So I just want the council to remember and just remind yourself when we talk about that, you're looking at your general fund revenues. And that's definitely something, if the council is saying that we want to make sure our #1 priority is to have adequate staffing in police and fire, that's going to be funding, which is going to have to be taken from somewhere else. So we need to make sure that that's always in the back of your mind when we look at things like that.
Say like earmark funding to ensure support.
So when you earmark, you're taking it away from another department. So I just want to make sure that the council's aware of that. So we do have earmarked funding in Measure I money, but are we really looking at, when we're ensuring adequate staffing, are we looking at developing maybe a potential recruitment and
recruit and retain.
Retentions.
Yeah.
We should be looking at that.
Earmark funds to recruit and retain.
But part of that is going to come from economic development, which we will hopefully be discussing here in a little while.
Yep.
Yeah. So at this point, Morgan, would you suggest that we make it a little bit more smart friendly?
Definitely. So what would it look like then specifically? Because we want to identify 3. And we have the overarching of law enforcement and fire department. And so the conversation becomes, do we also want to explore all opportunities to provide the best practices for dignified solutions to our growing homeless population, low housing income or low housing needs? So we identified that as one, and then potentially 2 more that fit within the scope of the fire and police.
I'm sorry, are you asking us to come up with 3 separate objectives or to somehow integrate homelessness in the police force?
No, what I'm saying is this one is pretty well encompassed by itself. And so what the council needs to decide if they want to incorporate this one, and then we need to identify 2 more. So we want a total of 3 objectives under create a safe and healthy community.
So we can add an objective.
Yes. Correct,
Okay.
yeah. So because 4 of you have identified that reoccurring police and law enforcement and fire, do we want to get more specific and have 2 different objectives that fit under that?
I would prefer that, but I am only one of 5.
Well, I know for instance that Councilmember Segerstrom has talked repeatedly about disaster preparedness. Is that something that we want to bring up from creating a health and safety community Is that something we want to put under that? Because we have two right now identified, insurance support, law enforcement and fire department staffing and resources, which was added. And then we talked about the exploring opportunities to provide best practice and dignified solutions to our growing homeless population.
Which I would add something to, by the way, but go ahead.
No, go ahead, sir.
Well, what I would add is also affordable housing to that. So in other words, it would say, our growing homeless population and low income and affordable housing needs.
Okay, so I'm happy to add establish emergency fire safety protocols that integrate with.
Well, that was also my second, my number 2 priority. So but I wasn't sure if we'd gotten there yet.
It's right on the first. Oh my gosh, where am I looking? Sorry.
Oh, it's the second, yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna add this one here for you. Yay.
Okay, so thus far, we've identified under create a safe and healthy community, first of all, to ensure and support law enforcement and fire department staffing.
And resources.
Yes.
And resources.
And resources.
Right there.
Okay.
We'll break this a little bit better once we get it all.
I know. Okay, so the second identifiable objective that we have is explore all opportunities to provide best practices and dignified solutions to our growing homeless population and low-income and affordable housing needs. So that was the second identified objective. And then the third being establish emergency fire safety protocols that integrate with county and state preparedness and evacuation. Any further questions, or does the council feel like those are 3 clear objectives for creating a safe and healthy community?
And before we move on, I would just like to entertain any comments or questions from staff that would have any input on any of these objectives.
Just when Amy took a phone call.
Just when Amy left.
For the staffing is what you're saying?
For all of them. So we identified 3, and I don't know, Jody, if you can zoom in on this thing here.
We're actually having some technical difficulties with the
With the second-
cameras.
second
So
camera.
they're kind of stuck where they're at, but we do have, Jerry has raised his hand. We will hopefully fix the camera issue on break.
Okay, we're not taking public comment just yet. Oh, Jerry's staff. That's right. Jerry.
Yes.
Sorry, too much going on. Sorry,
I-
Jerry, I apologize.
Yeah, I like to maybe suggest a goal on the safety is reduce your traffic level in the
Jerry, we're
downtown
not-
area.
We're not
Right.
adding, I'm sorry, sir, we're not adding goals at this point. We're just commenting on the ones that the council has established at this point.
Oh, okay, all right. But I was just going to mention that the Greenlee Road extension is an important goal that should be, and it has features for all of your goals in there on it. So I just like to not have you forget about supporting the Greenlee Road extension.
And I will definitely make a plug for that on enhancing on the last goal.
Jerry, I'm pretty sure that will come up as one of our
Thanks, Jerry.
foremost
And we all know
objectives.
your point of view on that as well. So, yeah.
Is the fire chief back? No.
No.
All right, we just wanted to make sure that the staff had any input. I think Morgan and I can kind of sit and just tweak them a bit from a SMART point of view, but I think this is a great start.
Mhm.
And we've got our first three goals, first three objectives established for our first goal.
Yay.
All right. Good job. All right.
Measurable, we're 20% there.
Yes, exactly. We are 20% there. Okay.
We need to make sure. Nubia, I had planned to take public comment at the end. Do you suggest we take public comment in between?
The end of the full goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be best, just to keep the flow going.
Okay. Just want to
Yeah.
make sure we're adhering to the Brown Act. All right. All right.
Okay, fantastic. So now we are on to goal 2, which is plan for the future of our community and enhancement of our quality of life.
Provide stewardship. Sorry.
Old one.
This one.
Just kidding. Let's try that again. Testing your knowledge. Provide stewardship for our financial resources. So that is goal 2.
Sorry, you're gonna have to shift around in your packets. Come for a second. And again, if you can identify a priority under this goal. And you don't have to be holden to the ones that are on the page. If you think of something now that you would like to see under this, please let us know.
So I've got one already.
Okay.
So it's like the very first one on here. So the council knows this also, but find funding and plan new storm drain system.
No, we moved around.
Sorry, page 6 is provide stewardship for our financial resources.
Sorry,
I said it out of
on this-
order.
Sorry, yes. So if you look at
Number
on
4
the
is number
page on
2.
number 4,
Oh, okay,
So
that's
we're
where I
on
got
number 4.
confused. Give
Sorry.
me about 30 seconds.
trying to get around with all the different documents that we have.
I completely lost where you are. I'm thinking that we're doing provide stewardship for our financial, which is page 4 then, where it's act of the economic, right,
Right here.
gracious.
So on the number 4, which is now number 2, the part about creating a formal orientation opportunity for newly elected council members. I know that 11 years ago now, almost 11 years ago when I walked into this position, I was all but clueless. And there wasn't a whole lot. I mean, I think former Mayor Dave Shepherd helped me out some, and of course, former Mayor Bill Canning helped me out. But there was a lot of things going on to try to steer me in other directions. Had there been a process in the works, it would have made it a lot easier, and we probably would have got some more accomplished. So I think that how would you put it, like a nonpartisan formal orientation for newly elected council members, maybe some understanding of the budget, what our roles really are, that sort of thing.
Doesn't the league do this?
Yes, and actually, Nubia and I have actually been working about putting together a new handbook and going through an orientation process. We think that's a good idea because that does provide an overview of what the council represents and goes into the financial stewardship part of the council.
Yeah.
So I think this is something definitely that we can put underneath financial resources. I don't know how you want me to craft it. Do you want me to talk about creating the formal orientation opportunities for newly elected council members? And then I think we can leave it as such, and then the city administrator, myself and Nubia can come back and what that would actually look like.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim, I'm
Well,
sorry.
I was just thinking that I'm not sure the city needs to use resources on doing a lot of it if the league already has all this stuff. I frankly think new members should be going to league orientation,
Okay.
new member orientation.
And yes, and that happens in January.
Right, and then what's specific locally, we can do here locally. But a lot of, I would say 80 to 90% of what you need to know as a council member would be covered in what the league does.
Which I think is a great thing. My concerns, and again, walking in, I had read a lot. And
Yeah.
matter of fact, even when I first got in the spot, you and I had talked a lot and you had explained a lot to me.
Because I've been sitting out there.
Yeah, exactly. But basically not only knowing what our role is, but what our jurisdiction is. A lot of council members will get confused about jurisdictions and, just because it's in a city street doesn't mean it belongs to the city type of thing. So
did you get a binder of like the roles and responsibilities and stuff like that? I got one of those. Did you, when I first got elected in 2010? You did not get one. Yeah.
Because
Did you get one?
it's, the binder
Yeah.
is severely out of date.
Well, I'm sure it is
So
because
it
I
needs to
haven't
be
really referred
updated,
to it
yes.
in the meantime, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's
So
definitely
there is a local aspect to that, but
I mean, you got to remember too, Jim, when you came into this position, and it's funny because you beat me out and I came back 2 years later, but when you came in, you were under with a different city administrator than I was.
Exactly.
And there was a lot of partisan politics in with that. There was a lot of politics
Really?
in, oh, yeah, I was not wanted here. I was told that.
that was sarcasm.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
There were council members who didn't have that opportunity to
Yeah.
work with the League of Cities, which is really invaluable. But I also think that having a backup city orientation would be a good thing.
I agree. I think from an administrator, beyond just the League of Cities, which I think is a great orientation, but having a thorough resource book and an actual understanding or an internal orientation to the city that goes over the budget, that goes over the departments and all of that, I think that's really necessary for council members.
Frankly, it should be online so people can look at it and know more about their government.
I also think meetings with new council members should have meetings with all the department heads individually so that they actually know.
I don't know.
So that they actually know each other or have been introduced and also understand a little bit better those departments. And
So what I'm hearing is, I am hearing a consensus on create a formal orientation opportunities for newly elected council members, which under a strategic plan that Morgan and I are going to be presenting to you, it can address all of these different things that we're talking about, which are highlighted in this, in what was already presented, which is a binder of policies, budget training, the league conference, organizational chart, and also meeting with your department heads. So that's, I think all of that would be a quantifiable thing underneath creating a formal or orientation opportunities.
Anyone who's running for office can get a grasp of what's going on too, because it, just stepping into the role is pretty overwhelming.
I would also
Remarkable,
add just the second,
regardless of what
oh,
people
I'm
think.
sorry. I'm sorry.
I thought you were finished. Sorry.
I would also add the second bullet about committees, because committees are a huge confusion for a new council member about what's going on. And you're just assigned to a committee and you go there and you don't even know what they're talking about. So if there could be something helpful to new council members about committees as well.
So
Are we talking about internal committees or external committees or
Get
both?
assigned to.
Yeah, okay.
I think our committee communication is pretty poor.
it's, yeah. So what I'm hearing is, I think we can smartify, if you will, the creating smartify, creating a formal orientation, and we can make sure that when we start putting our strategic plan together, that it formally addresses what you've all been talking about, which is not only League of Cities orientation, department head orientation, budget training, but also understanding committees and commissions that are represented by the city.
You know, it was funny, part of my orientation in 2010 was actually, I think, did I already say it? Was actually Councilmember Garaventa, before he was a council member, giving me all kinds of tips on what to do and how to handle it. So I know I've thanked you in the past, but a lot of people don't realize how much you've actually done even before you became a council member.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so that was one identifiable objective. We've got two more
So-
under that.
So stewardship of financial resources, it's not, I don't think it's on here anywhere, but it seems to me that this might be a good thing to discuss better or enhanced or because I don't even know what we're doing with staff training, but I think that if we have resources and we have staff working those resources, that they get the best possible training to use those resources, because we're such a small community with so little financial wherewithal that, you know, we can't afford to be buying a lot of capital equipment all the time if someone doesn't know how to use them. And I'm not saying that that's happening, but it seems to me this is a good place to put staff training under and enhanced staff training, better staff training.
So if I may, Councilmember Garaventa, to just kind of synthesize what you said, we could say something to the effect of investment in professional development of staff to address.
Yeah, that.
Okay.
Said it much better.
So investment in professional development of staff to ensure best practice and efficacy. Does that work? And best practice and best use of resources. That's even better.
Yeah, especially now that we're getting a lot of new technology, and having people know how to use that technology is tantamount to success.
About internships, and it seems like, I don't know if that would be incorporated into professional development or whether we establish internships to support staff and nurture interest and participation in local government. I mean, I think it would, you know, it's definitely to support staff if it was a really functional and public service type of internship.
So I know our fire department relies heavily on interns and volunteers, correct? Yeah, and it's a very functioning process. I know City Hall had tried to reach out to Columbia College in regards to it. I will say that the ability to not only, I think it's a great idea, but I think we need to make sure that we have the financial resources to provide computers and all of that for an intern as well. So we've got to be constantly thinking about what that looks like as far as having an actual intern. We need the infrastructure first, yes.
Just about interns, would an intern be helpful for Public Works?
It's hard to say, right? Because our public works people go through strenuous background checks and liability to the city. When you hire a public works employee, they take on a lot of, you know, equipment, and they're out in the public doing a lot of things that could be potentially considered dangerous. So you want to be very concerned about the liability that's posed to the city with taking on an intern in that capacity. It's not something we can't explore. Yes, go ahead. Come up to the podium.
So we have used interns in the past here at City Hall. It's been a while. We use them on special projects, but I don't think interns, at least for our department, I don't know about Chris, work well when you're trying to replace a staff position with an intern, because the learning curve and the things that you're training, we don't have time to train somebody that's going to leave. We need to have somebody in place that's going to be here long-term, or the hope is they're going to be here long-term, and the same with Public Works. But for individual like projects, when we were working on surveying and stuff like that, it worked great. But I know I don't have the staff, I don't have the time to train a staff position that's gonna go away. I just don't.
And from the finance side, we have cash, we have checks, we have private HR information down there. And so they need to be bondable as well. And that's usually a challenge.
Okay, so going back to providing stewardship for our financial resources, we heard from Councilmember Garaventa and Mayor Hawkins.
So I am going to, it's sort of under the rubric already of another objective here, but I would say budget training. I may be the only person here for whom that is my weakest suit, but is also one of our most important, and I might not be.
What just happened? I don't know what I just
It
touched.
doesn't like my voice.
I would say that that would definitely fall under the creating of the formal orientation.
Okay.
And that is something that we've been trying to work on with council members this year by making sure that we've been working on with you one-on-one, understanding budgets before they come before the council. Can I just make a plug for financial resource? Because something that Chris and I have been really trying to get ahead on, and just with COVID, we really have not had the capacity to do it, and it really needs to be a priority, is creating a reserve and fund balance policy for the city of Sonora. This governs the way we budget. Once the council establishes what that reserve looks like, we are then able to budget more efficiently, because then we are able to determine exactly where the council wants fund balance to be, where they want reserves, where they want everything to line up in the budget. So just my little 2 cents of a plug from a financial stewardship perspective. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, and create a reserve policy. Reserve policy, yeah.
Works for me. Put it down, please.
Councilmember Such, do you have any objections with that?
Me.
Okay. Got it. That's a big one. And actually in 2011, it was something that was put into Gadsby at the time, that requires all jurisdictions to have a formalized fund balance policy. So we need to get going on that. 10 now. It's 2011, right?
Tempest future.
So I heard Councilmember Such and Councilmember both say the same.
Yes. I think these are great ones for stewardship, and these are definitely something that are attainable this year.
Which we have 3.
Yeah, and we have 3. So I'm just going to read them out one more time to make sure that everybody is in agreement to these 3 established objectives for the goal of providing stewardship for our financial resources. Number 1, create a formal orientation of our newly elected council members. And we all talked about what that would look like, and our strategic plan would address the different elements of that. Number 2, investment in professional development of staff to ensure best practices and best use of resources. And number 3, prioritize use of discretionary funds and create a reserve policy. Consensus? Any questions? All right. Good job. At this point, Mr. Mayor, would you like to take a break now before we go into goal 3?
Yeah, so what's everybody think? 5-10 minutes?
Mary Rose, should we do public comment at this time since we're done with the goal right before the break?
Take public comment on the 2? Okay.
Yeah,
No problem.
so if there's any public comment on the 2 items we just discussed, star 9 or raise your hand if there's any public comment. I don't see anybody.
I don't see any either, sir.
Okay. Yeah, that did 5-10 minutes? Let's go for 10.
Yes.
That'll work. Okay.
They brought the coffee too back there.
All right. Perfect.
Okay, so we'll come back at 1:55.
All right, let's mute everybody, Joe.
I need Chris's help for that.
All right.
Everybody ready? Nubia, can you hear us?
I can hear you, Mayor.
Yay. Okay, we are back after our 14-minute break. I apologize. The coffee was good. Thank you. Okay, Mary Rose.
Okay, so just to recap, we did finalize objectives for goal 1 and goal 2. So the goals that we have finalized are create a safe and healthy community. That's goal 1. We did create 3 objectives under that. Goal 2 was provide stewardship for our financial resources. And we identified 3 specific objectives under that. We are now moving on to goal number 3. And goal number 3 is actually number 3 in your packet. It's in the purple writing, and it is stimulate economic prosperity for our community. Again, council members, please review those objectives identified and let me know your priority. Again, you don't have to utilize the ones that were previously identified if you think of something else. This was just to help guide you in objective formation. So again, looking at stimulate economic prosperity for our community. And hopefully the public can see our facilitator Morgan writing on the screen. We're having a little bit of difficulty with our camera, so we want to make sure the public can see what we are writing. Uh-oh. It's like blurry, Jody.
It's really fuzzy. Maybe it's the resolution on my computer, but I
No,
can't.
we noticed that, Nubia. We were just kind of, is that better, Nubia?
Not much. I think it just might be the resolution of probably my computer, but if it was clearer, I'm sure we could read it.
Yeah,
Hi,
probably.
Katie from the Sonora Chamber. It's too small to read for me.
Okay. Yeah, well, actually just stay there, Morgan. It's fine because then they can see it as well. All right, we'll just make sure everyone that we go step by step and make sure we announce everything that we're doing. All right, does anybody have a priority for goal number 3 identified as an objective? Would anybody like to start, or I can give you a couple more minutes too?
So, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I apologize. Okay. So under stimulate economic prosperity for our community, Mary Rose, you had came up with the wording, but you and I were talking about this at one point of having something that would more streamline say a new business or an existing business that wants to expand would come into City Hall instead of getting pointed in 10 different directions, having something that would better direct them.
To have like a one-stop shop.
Yes.
For city businesses.
Yes.
Where building and any of that types of permitting that would go through as far as developing for housing or commercial development. It's called a one-stop shop.
Yes.
And that was something that I did in my previous employment with Merced, but yes. So if the creation of a one-stop center, I know, and I don't know if Rochelle wants to speak to that as far as what the city provides for businesses. Rochelle, would you like to address, the council members are talking about the creation of a one-stop shop for businesses so that when businesses come to be able to create growth from a commercial standpoint or even from a building standpoint, a one area where everything that they would need would be provided in one area. Would you address that as far as community development? Is that already provided? Or is that something that could be expanded upon? Yes, please.
And Rochelle, please know, because I know you and I have had some really good discussions and you've explained a lot. And one of my thought processes in this is to help make your job or who takes over after you, their job that much easier and more efficient. So there's a lot less headaches.
So right now, if somebody wants to come into the city and do business, there's really 2 areas in the city they're going to go to. They're going to go downstairs for business licenses, of course, and then they'll come upstairs. And everything else they need to do to operate a business, unless there's like a fire department or a police department requirement that's specific to the type of business that they're trying to operate, would come through community development. So any building, if they're doing any work on their building, if there's a planning thing that needs to happen. So what happens when they come through the door, if they start downstairs, then they're going to get sent upstairs for their occupancy or any questions they should have. Or if they start upstairs, then we go over all the requirements and then we'll advise them that they need to do whatever licensing they need to do with downstairs. So between Kim and I, we're the contact that they meet with. If it's a new project, it's usually me. If it's just a remodel or something like that, Kim will take the lead on it. And then we walk through the processes specific to their business. So you kind of have a one-stop now because you only have 2 people. The business, but we definitely, and just timing issue, I mean, the whole couple things. One is our codes need to be clearer to understand. They're very complicated. They're complicated for us and they're complicated for the public. So as part of this code update that we're looking at, we're going to try to make things easier for people to understand. So that's the first thing. The other thing is we need to have more information on the website. And that's a timing thing too, is having the time to get that up and running, but it's really hard because we just don't have a lot of time in our day. And then so that to help people through that process. But once they get here, we hold their hand through the whole process. And they don't have to guess and by once they come through that door, we take them and help them through every step of the process.
I know at one point there was something happened with a business, and I don't know exactly because it was told to me, I think third hand, but something happened where some outlets weren't GFIs and they had to shut down for the day, and it was a brand new business that had just opened. That's the kind of stuff I'd like to see avoided. Not saying they didn't need that stuff, but something happened and something didn't get signed off along the way and there was confusion.
Yeah,
That's
so
kind of what I'm looking at.
we try really hard to give good customer service, but you have 2 things. One is sometimes people are human and they make mistakes. And if it's a health and safety issue, there might be a need because it's a health and safety issue and we can't overwrite that. We couldn't overlook it. So you couldn't just say, oh no, you can open if there's a health and safety issue, but we try really hard not to miss stuff like that, but things like that happen. Not very often, but it can. The other thing is not everything you hear on the street is exactly how things get. How you guys get things portrayed to you isn't exactly how things occur. So that's why it's always good if you want to ask us a question if you've heard of something, because sometimes things don't actually happen in the sequence you might hear.
Yep.
But customer service is always important, and we stress that and work with people. And I know Darren went out of his way with several businesses to help them get open and stay open. So yeah, no, I think customer service is really a priority. But unfortunately, we are the code compliance department, same as Amy. So we're not always the most liked people at City Hall. Just because we have to implement the code.
And that's reality.
And some of it's state. It's out of our hands. Yeah.
Are there permits or something that can be applied for online and not have to come to City Hall? I mean, is there part of the process that happens here that someone could just handle online with certain software or something?
Everything's available online, but we do need to get, this would be another thing that would be helpful if all of the city forms were fillable. They're not. So they can download them, they can print them, they can email them. Through COVID, most everything was done remotely. And we now, thanks to Chris, have a credit card machine that we never had in the past. And so a lot of our permits, especially for big projects, they just call in and they pay over the phone. And then that way, whoever comes in to sign or the inspector will take it out out with him so they don't have to come into City Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, through COVID, we've had to do a lot of switching things around, and some of it will stay in place because it's worked.
Yeah, great, thanks.
I just want to highlight one thing that, and I know it was addressed here as an objective that Rochelle talked about, and that was evaluating and updating the city codes and policies to eliminate barriers for affordable, sustainable, and neighborhood scale reinvestment. We know that our codes need to be reevaluated to ensure proper development for affordable housing, for economic prosperity. A lot of the codes were put in place long ago, and they definitely need to be evaluated to see how current they are with state laws, and to ensure that we're not creating barriers for economic opportunity and especially for affordable housing and housing affordabilities throughout the city. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And our, yeah, economic opportunity for our businesses. Anybody would like to put something down?
Evaluating and updating city codes and policies to eliminate barriers to, well, not necessarily just affordable, sustainable and neighborhood scale investment, but to eliminate barriers to investing in Sonora.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Councilmember Segerstrom, you read it as support incremental development by evaluating and
Well,
updating.
I struck the first part.
Okay,
I just
evaluate and update city codes and policies to eliminate barriers.
to business and residential development.
Did you get that, Morgan? So just evaluate and update city codes and policies to eliminate barriers to business and
Business.
Residential development. It's right here on the first one.
It is on page 5, and it's the first bullet underneath.
She's gonna turn it around. We just want to make sure that.
I was lost because I'm looking at investment, public safety, and then, no, that's okay. I just was trying to figure out what we're doing. So to clarify, since I've already made a point of it, this is to stimulate economic prosperity for our community. Number 3.
Yes.
We're working on, yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Do you have an objective for that?
I do, but it's the same one I read earlier, and that would be economic development, develop a plan and infrastructure for long-term, high-value business growth, along with better support for our existing businesses.
Is that on one of the pages, sir?
No, but you said add things.
No,
that
that's
we thought
fine.
were
I just wanted to
important.
see, because we gotta hurry, we gotta listen and write. That's fine.
Sorry, I can bring it up there if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll get one.
That'd be easier than just reciting it and dictating.
And then I do have one when she is ready.
I'm sorry, somebody had someone as well?
Yes. So encourage lifestyle improvements, sidewalks, trails, walking, and bike paths.
Mr. Mayor, I actually, if I'm just gonna throw this out here, but you guys are the policymakers, I actually feel that would probably be best under your quality of life goal.
Yeah, either way, as long as it makes it up there. I know that's one of the complaints that I think all of us hear. Yeah.
So I know that was, again, something that was brought up by a couple of council members was looking for annexation opportunities, looking at the revenue sharing agreement. So this would be under economic prosperity as well. So just want to throw that out there. Okay.
Yeah.
You can really combine that into one because it's in a lot of ways, they're going to be congruous, the revenue sharing and annexation.
So if I may, just to synthesize what you're saying is work with the county to revisit and revise the 1991 revenue sharing agreement and look for annexation opportunities to support commercial and residential development.
Yeah,
1991, 30 years ago.
Yes.
This whole different world.
County's laughing all the way to the bank.
One stoplight.
So those are 3 objectives. Would anybody else like to throw something out there? And then we can kind of take a consensus on what we're looking at for the 3?
Well, the other one I liked was the just next one down was building partnerships with local agencies and organizations to promote attracting businesses and support and retaining existing businesses.
Councilmember Sutch, did you have something you would like to add as well?
Not that I'm finding.
Okay. So the one that. Right, she's just gonna finish writing and then we'll turn around and see what we want to do with the four that were identified. Yep. We'll go ahead and move it back over here so you guys can see, since we can't see it over there. We're just trying to make sure that, because we can't do the cameras right now. So number one, we have identified as develop a plan for infrastructure for long-term high business growth, along with better support of existing businesses. It says and. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I read and. Develop a plan and infrastructure. Evaluate and update city codes and policies to eliminate barriers. Didn't we say something about that? It was, I think it was barriers to, I think you said develop. Yeah, business and residential development. Barriers to business and residential development. Number three was work with the county to revisit and revise the 1991 revenue sharing agreement and look for annexation opportunities to support commercial and residential development. And number four is build partnerships with local agencies and organizations that promote attracting businesses and support, support and retain existing businesses. So if I may, number one and number four have a lot of the same qualities and overlapping of phrases. What does any person like one or the other better? Do we want to combine some of the language?
Communities with local, what's the,
Build partnerships.
oh, partnerships, okay.
And it's on page 6 of your packet.
One of the originators there, I would welcome combining them. Mine was the response while we were rushing last meeting, and so I'd say combine them.
What if we said, and again, this is just me throwing it out there, is develop a plan that includes building partnerships with local agencies and organizations that promote attracting businesses and support and retaining existing businesses. What if we put develop a plan that includes building partnerships with local agencies and organizations? Is something that affect, something that addresses that we are going to create an economic development plan. I know what you're going, Mayor Pro Tem Plummer, but we want to. Mhm. Does anybody have a way of how they would like that to be crafted?
Take the top one and put in the other one. Well, to me, how it's worded is not important. The fact that it all becomes one objective. It's a part of an objective is the important thing.
Mayor.
At the top?
Yeah,
Sure.
I can't quite
It's
read that.
develop a plan and infrastructure for long-term high business growth along with better support of existing businesses.
What's high business?
High,
value, I think is what I wrote. That's what I have on my paper.
I'm not sure we need to be deciding what businesses need to be. I think we just businesses.
Sure. But if we can have more opportunities that pay,
Living wage
better than
businesses.
the average, minimum wage, or, because while I love and support our local small businesses a lot, many of them, their employees don't really earn a living wage if that's all they have to live on. And if we can bring more into the city where they're paying 100 or better a year, then that would be what I'm hoping for.
And keep in mind that sales tax is what the city lives and breathes onto. So when they're looking at development, there's opportunity for that as well.
Yeah, and well,
Without
a
sales
lot of
tax,
that's not
it's gonna
high-paying
die.
jobs. You have professionals that are making, hundreds and some odd dollars, but are they generating sales tax? I don't think we should be, I think high value people should be included, but I don't think we should forsake them for any other type of business. I think we just need to be. Long-term business? Yeah, long-term business growth of any kind, really.
Yeah,
so to put it in perspective, Mayor Pro Tem, and I agree with.
I'm not arguing with.
No,
you.
no, I just wanted to say, what Rochelle, just for the public, because she was sitting back there without a mic, for the public, what Community Development Director Rochelle Kellogg stated was the revenue that the city receives is primarily sales tax. So when we talk about job growth, and obviously we want to stimulate job growth for the betterment of the citizens within Sonora,
Exactly.
but for ensuring revenue growth for the city, we have to look at from a sales tax perspective. And when you look at business development, we want to ensure that we're also looking at what that revenue is going to look like from the city's perspective as well. We do have a very prominent business right now in the city of Sonora where we don't receive any sales tax revenue. And so that's, it's a very prominent business taking up very prominent retail space, and we don't receive really any revenue at all from this business.
Sell products that would otherwise pay taxes, and the reason I'm asking, my real question is, if somebody provides a service, does that end up being completely untaxed? For example, an accounting firm that might generate for themselves $500 million in revenue.
Yes,
we have a business license, and that would be it.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That.
Mhm.
Stated.
So do we want to further clarify Councilmember Plummer's statement? Do we want to further combine the two statements? What says the council?
I think we've made the argument about taking the high value out of that and just making it long-term business growth.
The plan and the infrastructure, I'm assuming, includes some of these partnerships, maybe eventually some part-time or full-time, hypothetically, person developing, business leads, etc.
So again, maybe just for me to help clarify so council can understand what we're kind of been talking about, maybe develop a plan and infrastructure that includes building partnerships with local agencies and organizations that promote and attract business growth and development.
For retail business then essentially, as far as to benefit the city.
So I think you need to look at it both ways, right? I don't think, as a city administrator, obviously I'm not the policymakers. I take my cue from you.
This is a question. It's not, I'm not proposing it.
The-
It's a question though for what we should be thinking about to benefit the city. Because
So
that's
when
really
you
all
look
we're
at your,
looking for.
when you look at your top sales tax generators in the city of Sonora that provide the most revenue for the city of the Sonora, it is your retail establishments.
And that's
Walmart
good to bear
and
in
Lowe's.
mind. It's good
Yes.
to bear in mind. And then we got Wilco, or is it Wilco that's building? What is it?
I just don't think we should be, Hello, there we go. I just don't want to emphasize one business over the other
Yeah.
because they all have different ways to play the game, part in this. The high value businesses will bring in revenue to the individual who will end up spending it in the city of Sonora supposedly.
To some
Hopefully.
degree, our restaurants will hopefully benefit a lot.
Yeah, but what's that?
I said, hopefully our restaurants at least will benefit a lot.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and so there's, those people have disposable income to spend here.
Yep.
But we can't,
Well,
only emphasize them because, obviously sales tax pays the bills here. So,
We include both.
yeah.
Living wage jobs and retail businesses or something, because I do think that we as a council should be supporting living wage jobs as well. Beside, in addition to retail, which, and retail is part of, can also be part of Sonora's charm. There are many reasons to promote retail in addition to sales tax. But I also think that we should be thinking about, in Mark's original statement about at least living wage jobs. Because that benefits everyone as well.
So we're looking at this one down here. Where would you suggest, Councilmember Sutch?
I can't read it, so.
Okay, it says, develop this, so far we had developed a plan and infrastructure that builds partnerships with local agencies and organizations that promote attracting business growth and development. Could we say that promotes attracting business growth, development, and living? Did you want to add something on that with livable wages?
Yeah, I'm not sure where I would put that, however.
I think that we probably use this as a starting point. We will be revisiting this in the future, I'm certain. And as we try and tailor things or say we're meeting this need and not that need, that we could address this in the future.
I was just gonna say,
Strategy.
as
That's
a
right.
plan, when we go to develop the actual plan, that could be part of the prerequisites of the plan, that it has an element to ensure that there are livable wage jobs within the city of Sonora. I think that the objective though about developing the plan and infrastructure for business growth is the key of that objective.
And I think we want all types of jobs. You want entry-level jobs that, like my daughter had 2 or 3 jobs downtown, and retail permits you to do that as a student. She wasn't ready for a $100,000 job, but she will be.
So it looks like we've identified 3 objectives at this point, and I'll just read through them again just to make sure we have a consensus on that. Number 1 is to evaluate and update city codes and policies to eliminate barriers to business and residential development. Number 2, work with the county to revisit and revise the 1991 revenue sharing agreement and look for annexation opportunities to support commercial and residential development. And number 3 is develop a plan and infrastructure that builds partnerships with local agencies and organizations that promote attracting business growth and development. Yes, sir.
So are we weighting these equally or are we prioritizing one above the other?
They're all equal.
Okay.
They are equal. Is there any questions or comments? Do we have a consensus of the 3 objectives under economic opportunity? Right,
Yay, 60%.
great. So number 4 is promoting our historical and cultural heritage. And you'll notice on the packet I gave you, it's the very last number 5, and I don't have anything under there. And that's because this was something that wasn't really identifiable previously. However, giving it more thought and kind of what I said from the beginning, we can look at promoting historical and cultural heritage as it relates to many things, and making sure that we're inclusive to all members of our community. I know we have talked at length this last year about social equity. So I think there are elements within our social equity committee and social equity ideals that could fit under here. There are also issues concerning Vision Sonora, and in regards to the mural project and whatnot. So there are different things, and I apologize since this is a different goal that we hadn't had time to actually thoroughly look at. If you can try to think of any objectives that you would like to see under this goal. And I'll give you guys a couple of minutes because this is something that hasn't been brought up previously.
Well, one thing that I thought of is, in the meantime is, and I'm not sure exactly how to word it, but to develop partnerships to help enhance our heritage tourism, which is a large part of our economy, people coming here and visiting, and having some sort of objective that would help the city and its residents continue to enhance those historical and cultural assets that people come to visit and see. I just don't know how to word that as an objective.
I was thinking about, the city's competitive advantages, and our history is one of them. And maybe we define and develop the city's historical competitive advantages.
There you
To
go.
promote
heritage tourism.
Yeah.
to promote.
Yeah,
Does
or
that
something
sound-
like that, because it is, our county's history is such an integral and important part of its being.
Did you say to develop the cities?
Yeah, it's define and develop.
Define
And
and
develop.
develop the city's cultural competitive advantage
Yeah,
to enhance.
Business and visitors and tourism and or whatever.
There's a term being bandied about for this called heritage tourism.
Heritage.
Yeah.
To enhance the city's heritage tourism.
Yeah, I read the article in the paper the other day about how the state legislature was going to name the city of Sonora the city of Stewart. And the people of Sonora fought back because of the heritage for the Mexican miners that came up here from Sonora, Mexico. I knew where that part came from, but I had no idea that people actually stood up and said, we want to be named Sonora.
Yeah. I don't think they much cared. I don't think most of the population cared for Mr. Stewart. I think they thought he was trying to had an ego, let's put it that way.
Like many of
Trying
our
to
early,
get a town named after him, and they rebelled.
but he got a street.
Huh? He did get a street. It used to be Holden Street.
Be a suburb.
Mm-hmm. It was almost, right?
Yeah.
Before Benicia.
Yeah.
Okay, we have,
Councilmember Garaventa and Segerstrom's are both the same. You both agreed on.
That's okay. You can put mine in there too.
As the same.
Yes.
That's hard to do.
I know.
So I'm still looking for the exact wording, but I view enhancing our visual areas as well, like cleaning out the Woods Creek and making it a little more walkable, et cetera, as part of that draw. I'm open to criticism on that because maybe it doesn't really come under this rubric, but that would be my suggestion or point. We have some areas that could just be incredibly rich for our draw. They are part of the history, but right now, I mean, when you just have Stewart Street, for example, not Stewart, Stockton, thank you. No, Stockton, and instead of being what could be a virtual park along that walkway, it's just as ordinary as it comes. And some of it's kind of dirty and overrun, or you just avoid looking at it. And so that was one of my suggestions. A couple different people suggested it to me, and I thought that's really good. I didn't know if it was under this type of cultural heritage, but I think it does come under a little bit if we try.
So something along the lines of developing a streetscape visual plan?
There was something in here that actually worded it very nicely, and I'm trying to find it on a rush and not doing very well.
And if I may, was that something that was identifiable under the Vision Sonora plan?
Yes, it was the Stockton walkway from fairgrounds to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was here under improved Sonora quality of life issues, create clean Woods Creek to make it part of our city attractions. Right above more public restrooms.
I wasn't here that we were looking at inclusivity
Right. To commit to equity and inclusivity.
Social equity and appreciation for our multicultural heritage.
Yes.
Well, how about equality instead of equity? To me, equity always says, it just screams racism to half the county. I mean, it's one of those trigger words that really upset half the county. And I just not include equity, because as soon as you talk equity and justice, you're saying, we want to be racist. It's just, we get to pick out who the winners are. And that's something I don't think the city should be going down that.
Could you explain how you think equality is better than equity?
Well, equality is part of our Constitution. Equity is a modern term for essentially co-joined with racial justice, which most people in this county, probably a majority, see as getting even and not just gaining equality. It's something that's very debatable. I just don't think that should be language we're using.
So you're saying it's a trigger?
It is. You can hear the nervousness in my voice just talking about it. And I'm sorry about it, but it's a trigger.
Well, I mean, we started out with inclusivity, so maybe that's the path that we pursue. But I think, is there anything in in the committee's vision that would work well? Vision statement that would work for inclusivity?
Equity is very different.
Yeah.
And equality is everyone has the same platform. And that's a good thing. Equity is
Achieving.
right, but equity is, but if everyone has the same platform, someone's 6 feet tall, someone's 5 feet tall, the 5 foot tall person doesn't see it. So it's just bumping it. So everyone actually ends up at the same vantage. That's all equity is, and it's not talking about race necessarily.
No, but that's how it's seen by most of our county. Well,
Not most.
Much of our county.
Not most, I don't
You
think.
keep saying most of the
well,
county, and I don't believe that.
But I understand that it is a trigger for many. I do understand that, but my guess, and I think the work of the social equity is to explain it in a way so that people don't feel triggered. Because I actually feel like, Mark, that you would agree with it if you.
I probably would agree with a lot of things, and on a one-to-one basis, it's completely different from trying to establish policy. And And I like, when this is all over, I look forward to sitting down and having a long coffee with you. Like I said, we're getting off topic. But why don't we go more towards just emphasizing the cultural breadth and variety of Sonora under this title of our historical and cultural history.
I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's not enough for me.
And I think it's too much. So I'll probably get voted down here, but that's where I stand.
So Councilmember Sessions, if I may, I would like to put down what you put, so we have it on the board here. Would you mind repeating it for us?
I have no idea what I said. Let me see. Promotes equity and inclusivity. I think, I can't, was it longer than that?
Yes.
Probably needed to be.
And then Councilmember Segerstrom finished it off, so.
Thanks, Ann.
No, I don't think.
I was trying to see, because I know we talked about it before on the objectives, and I know you had a word in here, hold on.
The committee, and it's always and belonging, promotes equity, inclusivity, and belonging for all.
Equality for individuals of all races, genders, and social identities, perpetuate a dialogue through the social equity.
Now, where are you?
I am on
6.
page 6.
I think I'd be able to find this stuff.
Under support sustainable economic development, well, under the third purple, it's the fourth bullet.
You want to add something about historical heritage, right? Promoting.
It's about 1/3 of the way down the page on page 6.
Oh, ensure a climate of equality for individuals of all races, genders, social identities.
So that uses both words
It does.
to mutual advantage.
Yeah, we could do something like that. So we have a suggestion. What if we used, again, ensure a climate of equality for individuals of all races, genders, and social identities that promotes, I'm sorry, you said that promotes.
That point to our historical and cultural heritage.
That points to our cultural, historical and cultural heritage?
I think it though sort of is just more of the same. I think we should be stepping forward here. Can we do ensure a climate of equity instead of equality?
We can put that, and then if we have to come down to a vote, we can do that. So why don't we put ensure climate of equality / equity for individual, and then we can go see which way. Mm-mm. Councilmember Such, would you agree to ensure a climate of equality and inclusivity for individuals of all races, genders, and social identities
Equality isn't equity. I mean, they're just very different words. I think equity is important. You know, I just have, if I could digress for a minute about why it's important to me, I was just on a phone call with the College Foundation and we were talking about the Promise Committee. And in the Promise Committee, we offer free tuition and fees for all Tuolumne County and Calaveras County students who come here right after college. That's equality, but equity is starting to talk to those students long before they become seniors in high school about the importance of college, so that they're coming with the same. You know, we all know that preparation for college starts younger, much younger in life, for it to be equitable.
And I'd love to see everybody coming from the inner city having the absolute best education, where people move to the inner city so that their kids can have that education. That's where equality would really start.
No, that's where equity starts. There's a big difference between the two words. It's where equity starts, so that people have the same preparation. If your parents talk to you about college your whole life, you are much more likely. And it's just, I mean, it's not what we're not talking about education here, but it's the difference between equity and equality. That's all.
Yeah, I think we're probably gonna have to take a vote on it.
Okay.
It's like that sustainability versus environmentally friendly. To me, it's about the same thing, and I think the average person, they're probably looking at it the same way. And I don't mean that insulting, most people are looking at both those words and they're going,
To some of us, words are very important.
yes, and that is perfectly fine. I mean, I don't know, I guess I see the world differently. I treat people as people. I don't say, hey, my gay friend or my black friend. I see him as my friend. And I think that's some of the generational differences here. So we're gonna have to take a vote on it, obviously, and go from there.
Do we do,
Okay, I am
before we
on.
take a vote, let's at least get the remainder of the phrase, and then that way we can vote on whether we do equality versus equity. So do we want to add the word inclusivity in there as well, as Councilmember Sagerstrom suggested?
I think it adds
Okay.
to the position.
So ensure a climate of equality or equity and exclusivity for individuals of all races, genders, and social identities. How are we going to end that?
We were to point to our historical and cultural heritage is what we initially said.
Do we like that, to point to our historical and cultural heritage, or to support our in support of our cultural, in support of our historical and cultural heritage? I think if you're just looking at contributions instead of just your overarching historical and cultural heritage, because some people were here. I don't know. Let me read it one more time. And then if anybody wants to make any more tweaks before we vote on the use of the word equality versus equity. Ensure a climate of equality or equity and exclusivity for individuals of all races, genders, and social identities in support of our historical and cultural heritage. Do you want our OUR, or just in support of historical and cultural heritage? Our. Or yes, yeah. Are we okay with that term before we vote? Are you okay with our instead of the cities? Okay. Okay, so Nubia, I'm gonna call to a vote for this. So do I need to take public comment after the vote? So I want to make sure we get public comment if we're actually voting on something. Okay, so I'm going to take public comment. Let's take public comment before we go to a vote. Jody, if you would, please.
star 9 or raise your hand if anyone has any public comment on this.
I do not see any hands raised at this time.
So,
Okay.
Mary Rose, I'm going to throw something else out there because, again, I mean, my opinion's my opinion, but I would like to actually see a third option, which is using both words because they're both important. So I'm going to throw that one out there.
And exclusivity?
Yes. Because again, I mean, I don't know any better way to say it, you know, and we're talking two different generations. I saw things differently than y'all saw them, and I don't know what else. So yeah, so I say we put all three in there.
So can I just, and I don't mean to throw a curveball in all of this. From a staff perspective, how would we measure that? So we need to, when we're thinking about objectives, how would we thoroughly measure ensuring a climate of equality, equity, and inclusivity for individuals of all races, genders, and social identities?
Cities, practices, review of all the practices, hiring practices, operational practices to see if there's any bias in there.
Which I believe, Mary Rose, you're already working on a lot of that stuff, redoing a lot of our legal hiring practices. I know you've been working on a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some measurable activity right there.
Yeah. I think since all the protests, I think that was one of the biggest concerns that came out of that is that each jurisdiction was following some sort of best practice that wasn't I don't want to keep bringing up the word racist, but racist or whatever in being implemented that led to what happened to Mr. Floyd. Doesn't happen here. I think that, and so I think that's the main, what the social equity committee kind of, how the social equity committee kind of grew is that people here wanted to make sure that what we're doing in our city and what people are doing all over the country is not, that it doesn't happen here, that that there's not a bias. So therefore, implementing some sort of plan, a review plan would be a measurable.
Well, that's what I wanted to make sure, that we put
Yeah.
something in the wording that ensures some sort of measurableness of the phrase.
Equity, equality, and inclusivity for individuals of all races, genders, and social. And develop best practices to ensure a climate of equity. Blah, 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 blah.
I think just having a public review.
Yeah.
At this point, for a goal for this year, is kind of the best.
A public review of
Of the city's practices in regards to equity and equality and. Oh, sorry.
But how is that historical and
Morgan.
cultural?
Well, that's the thing. We were talking about putting social equity under this
Yeah.
bailiwick.
So what Morgan is hearing is provide a public review of best practices that ensures a climate of equality, equity, and inclusivity for individuals of all races, genders, and social identities in support of our historical and cultural heritage.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
It works for me. Just as long as I don't have to say it 3 times.
Mr. Mayor, are you okay? Am I getting consensus on that language?
Mhm. Yep.
I'll read it one more time after she's done writing it, just to make sure. So provide a public review of best practices to ensure a climate of equality, equity, and inclusivity for individuals of all races, genders, and social identities in support of our historical and cultural heritage. Mayor Pro Tem?
I have one relevant question, and that is on this question of equity. Let's say you have 2 equally qualified people in the police department ready for promotion. One is a person of color and the other is a white male. The general understanding is that in order to make up for past wrongs by our forefathers, that the person of color would be preferenced. And so that is my belief, and this is my trouble with equity, that you're not, even if he's a little less qualified, or she, then they would get the preference because of past misdeeds by other people. That is my understanding, and this is my gripe. And I think a lot of people who aren't pushing it, who aren't progressive, which is most of this county, that we have with this. Am I wrong in assuming that? See,
I don't know. I don't.
Over our head. I mean, that's out of our jurisdiction. That's-
Yeah,
No, but
I don't think that the city has any jurisdiction over that. I think that's a state law, if anything.
That, yeah. Okay, but I'm just, if we're including it, to me, this is saying we are going to be racist. It's just we want to be racist in the right way instead of the wrong way.
No, I think it's, we just want to even, it's that, I don't think that that's what we mean by it, any more than equality.
I
means
have
that.
always known that if I want to get into an Ivy, for example, that I would have to be quite a bit better than a lot of people who are not white, unless they're Asian, who have to outperform me considerably because they tend to be off the charts. That there is inequality across the board, and I'm actually subject to it. Well, not lately, but when I wanted to be going to an Ivy League school, and where equity says we're going to rejigger it, even though somebody's objectively less qualified, we want to give them a better chance.
I actually think equality does the same thing. I don't think that's what we're talking about here.
These are coming under fire and are being rescinded. So
Yale was
good
just
luck with your application.
well, actually, it was Brown that I wanted to get into, but Yale was just told by the Supreme Court that for the time being, continuing to use racist policies for entrance is permittable. And it was regarding the Asians who are greatly disadvantaged in trying to get into those schools. They have to be off the charts good. And anyway, but I think let's just say I'm outvoted and this goes through. I still have a quibble with it, and I think I've at least.
So it sounds like to me, Mr. Mayor, we need a vote on this.
I guess so. I was
So-
hoping we could just come to a consensus because
But let me read it and we'll just take a vote, a yay or a nay. Again, I'm reading the question. This is for provide a public review of best practices to ensure a climate of equality, equity, and exclusivity for individuals of all races, genders, and social identities in support of our historical and cultural heritage. All those in favor say aye. Oh,
I don't.
well, I read this is, I don't know if we need a motion. I'm just trying to get consensus on this item.
Yeah, I think it's just a consensus. Yeah, so I'm good with it.
I'm good with it.
All those in favor saying, are those against?
Nay.
Okay, so this does, consensus is the majority that this will be the language for our objective under that. I think we do need to clean up the language that Councilmember Plummer stated as far as the Woods Creek, and I don't know if we got consensus on that. But he had stated clean Woods Creek to make it part of our city's attractions. Something that might make it more attractable from a SMART objective is develop a plan to clean Woods Creek to make it part of our city's historical or cultural attraction, whatever is best, or would you want to keep that, or what?
And just,
That is great, Councilmember Segerstrom.
and where is this now? On Stockton Street, where?
Fairgrounds, from the fairgrounds to Washington Street.
Okay,
there's,
that's not
so-
Woods Creek, that's actually Sonora.
Sonora Creek. Oh, you're right.
Well,
Okay, yeah.
Sonora Creek.
So I would say that we should be looking at natural landmarks rather than specifically Woods Creek.
So do we want to also though use the phrase in which Councilmember Segerstrom stated, which was revisit the Vision Sonora plan to include
Oh, okay,
Or
sure.
to improve.
Pedestrian walkways thing.
Well, it was
language.
gorgeous,
Yeah.
you know, and with
There was talk from Connie about creating or building a trail all the way up to Greenlee Road, which at some point I was hoping to involve Carrie and Vocal and actually look at that.
Oh, huh, interesting. That would
So,
be- that
yeah,
would be
so
pretty
it's
But-
more than just Vision Sonora. There was definitely talk about trails that go up Sonora Creek up toward Greenlee.
Huh, I
Okay.
didn't ever know that Greenlee.
You know, that's something I think we should revisit is, you know,
Yeah.
more walking way connectivity, green
Mhm.
belting, pushing through walkways. I could think of the end of Hope Lane for going over to Columbia Way, like I used to walk to school.
yeah.
Having a pathway for walkers and joggers, bikes. Another one would possibly be the crossing over from, what's the stops, what's the little court on Morningstar? Is that Morningstar Court at the bottom there where the stop sign is?
Over the
All
hospital.
right.
No, you're there at the bottom where the stop sign is behind the dome.
By the cemetery.
And then there's a court, a little court that goes down there.
Okay.
Well, you could extend that walkway out and come out on Lyons.
Oh,
And that would be a good circular walkway instead of having to go all the way around. So there's opportunity for
a lot of pedestrian.
a lot of
like-
pedestrian throughways.
Now, is
that we
that,
should be
is
exploring.
that part of Vision Sonora? Is it included? in
No,
its
Vision
own?
Sonora is only it's a
Okay, so
it's a
this would-
Caltrans based plan. So it's based on where the state highway is.
Because I mean,
Mostly.
now there's the plan we approved, the biking and walking path that is going up Woods Creek.
Right.
and
Yeah,
over
but
to-
by the way, the grant for that
Okay.
we didn't get the grant for that.
Oh, we didn't. Oh.
No, so we
That
have
was
to
like a
we
$4
have to
million
redo that.
plan, yeah.
Yeah, but stuff like that. And I think we need a more comprehensive plan of doing stuff that.
So
doing that.
just
And
to,
I know I'm freaking you out.
no. No, I'm just saying that I just want to let you guys know. So we maintain the creek from the bridge at Southgate coming up. So that's what the area that the city, that area along the fairgrounds is within the fairgrounds property. So that is not part of anything that we maintain. So I want to let you guys know that.
Okay.
And east of the fairgrounds, is that in the city's jurisdiction?
East of the, yeah, so from the bridge, you see where the guys
Right.
clean? That's where, from there up, they clean, but
On
below that
both
is,
creeks.
yeah, and below that is the fairgrounds,
Uh-huh.
and that's the area that hasn't been cleaned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's by the train.
Yeah, it's out, heading
South of
heading
train,
west
west of
or
train.
south or whatever, it
Yeah.
kind of jags there.
So it's the responsibility of the fairgrounds?
Yeah,
Or
and
responsibility of the
it's a
Caltrans?
fairgrounds, it's a fairgrounds, it's in their
Okay.
property. And in the past, what Public Works would help coordinate, at about the same time, but they haven't done that for a while.
Okay,
Yeah, the fairgrounds, that's in their property.
yeah, agricultural board.
Okay.
So now we've gone from Vision Sonora to a whole new
Okay.
creation of walkways.
My
I-
intent was Sonora Creek then,
Right.
because it's old Sonora people who said Woods Creek to me as a suggestion. But anyway, but Sonora Creek, and then I think some of these ideas that Jim was mentioning of making some circular trails, given our druthers in long term.
Of course, that's not really,
Can
that's
we
not
just-
really, that's not really cultural or historical,
Yeah,
which is what. the
it's
sub-
lifestyle.
But it is lifestyle.
Yeah, now we're in the
Always
lifestyle.
Okay, I don't know where we're at.
So we're kind of lost on this one too, because bike trails, walkways are generally lifestyle, quality of life issues.
Yeah.
What we had thought about was revisiting and reevaluating the Vision Sonora plan to ensure our city's natural resources are, but I don't know how much we can even look at the Vision Sonora plan because it's already been adopted, correct?
as well.
So I have
It
one.
needs to be.
I have a suggestion, but you guys can take this. You are the policy. But while preserving our historic and our cultural heritage, also encourage investment into our downtown for, but if there's a way to word that, you guys are the wordsmiths. But preserving our historical, cultural and heritage while bringing the city into the 21st century and, maybe looking at policies and programs that preserve but promote our historic area and enhance it so that people can make some changes, but yet it is preserved enough to still be a tourism destination for people. So, because there are times it is difficult for people to do stuff in the city, just to let you know.
Well,
So anyway, I'm just throwing that out there as maybe a way for economic development to tie that in and still preserve your historic and cultural. Because Woods Creek's pretty specific. That
Right,
one's a
and
little
it's
bit
Sonora
more
Creek.
broad. Anyway, just throwing that out there. You
Yeah.
guys are objectively specific.
Morgan,
I know.
Morgan, could you write Sonora Creek, please?
Say that again?
Write Sonora Creek, please. I was in error there. Thank you.
So again, where do we want to end up with this? Do we want to keep visiting and tweaking with the language to do something with our natural resources as it relates to our cultural heritage? Or do we want to put that part of looking at as a quality of life issue?
Some overlap where we could throw them one direction or another. But
Sonora Creek is such an important historical and cultural body and has just been ignored. We treat it like it's a parking lot or something, it's not. I mean, most cities really develop their creeks so that they're, I think if people drove into town and Sonora Creek was kind of restored to be cleaned and maintained and celebrated, I think it would it just makes Sonora much more attractive. So.
And that's really measurable right
Yep.
there too.
Yeah,
So
that's
to
a great-
clean and maintain, so to develop a plan to clean and maintain Sonora Creek, to make it a part of our city's cultural heritage or
Cultural attraction. Cultural attraction.
Is that all right with you?
yes,
Okay.
the only thing that I would have maybe thought of adding, but it might be redundant, is to also promote it. I mean, little sign somewhere, Sonora Creek, home of so many ounces of
maintain,
gold
and
taken
promote.
or tons of gold taken out, something like that.
Or
where it's
it-
promoted, but
It was also a very important creek to the Native American people who were here in their day. Oops.
So clean, maintain, and promote Sonora Creek to make it a part of our city's cultural attraction. Do we have a consensus on that language?
yay.
So she's gonna rewrite it down here. And I think we have our three.
We do.
Yes. But, we didn't really have anything ahead of time, so we did a good job on that, I thought. Good dialogue. So I'll go ahead while she's writing and read the number 1. So we go over the 3 objectives for goal number 4, which is promoting our historical and cultural heritage. Objective number 1 is define and develop the city's cultural competitive advantage to enhance the city's heritage tourism. Number 2 is the one that got the most traction with provide a public review of best practices to ensure a climate of equality, equity, and exclusivity for individuals of all races, genders, and social identities in support of our historical and cultural heritage. And number 3 is develop a plan to clean, maintain, and promote Sonora Creek to make it part of our city's cultural attraction. Right.
Give yourself the high five.
That was great. Good job. Okay, and whew, we're still plugging away. So our last goal is plan a future of our community and enhancement of our quality of life. Excuse me, plan for the future of our community and enhancement of our quality of life. And this is number 2 in your packet that I gave you, and it starts on page 3. So if you would like to review a priority under those objectives, I know we're hearing a lot about storm drain systems, so I know that's probably going to be something on there. Hold on just a second.
Establish a climate action plan.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Start planning and put the city's horsepower behind extending Greenlee Road on the Greenlee Road extension.
I'm sorry, which one was that?
So that one was
Don't remember, I
actually,
mean, I just did it off memory, but the
Yep.
Greenlee Road extension and putting,
hold on. I know we had it in here somewhere. I just want to make sure I got the wording correctly. And I know Jerry would be happy to see that. On, oh yeah, formal adoption of the Greenlee. Formal adoption of Greenlee Road extension as a priority for the city and TCTC.
yep, lowering traffic downtown would be one of the absolute best things the city could do long-term for quality of life issues for our residents and visitors.
And then Councilmember Stragerstrom.
Yeah, I'd like to update the City of Sonora Energy Action Plan and establish a climate action plan.
So those are 2 objectives.
Well, okay. I guess the overarching one is a climate action plan under which our Sonora Energy Action Plan can function.
So would you like to say establish and develop a City of Sonora climate action plan?
Thank you. Excellent.
And I would like to explore the possibility of a rainwater reclamation flood control project. What?
Put in storm drain ones.
I'm sorry, what was yours, Councilmember Sutch?
And explore the possibility of a rainwater reclamation flood control project.
Is that, I'm sorry, is it on somewhere so we can?
It's on page 4, the first full bullet.
Oh, explore, right here, explore the possibility of a rainwater reclamation flood control.
And that
plan.
includes storm drains.
So plan for the city, what you're talking about, not a project.
It would be a project. And there's grant funding for it through
So would that be like, yeah, would it be a dam somewhere or?
No, it would be direct, it's directing water to,
Right.
to an enhanced storm drain and also water storage containers.
But storage on that level means a reservoir of some kind.
No, it's not a reservoir. It's not a reservoir. Twain Hart just got almost 5,000 or 4-point-something million grant to do one in downtown Twain Hart. It's not a reservoir.
How many gallons are you talking about?
Who got the grant?
What?
Who got the grant?
GCSD
GCSD or the TCH,
Yeah,
see, it's a CSD?
It's right here.
Or is that a,
Oh, it's over there.
Is that-
I'm
or is
not
that a
fighting you on
TV?
this. I'm just trying to ask where you put all the water.
You have receptacles along the way. It would probably, I mean, I'm not the one that would design it, but my guess is it would start by Sunrise Hills. Because that a lot of water comes off of that hill now and floods downtown in big rain events. And part of it also is to capture that water in storm drains also, not just to store it.
Would that be part of a climate action plan?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, well, then wouldn't we put that under establish, develop a climate action plan?
As long as we talk about this.
Yeah,
that would be
yeah,
great.
I mean, including rainwater, whatever.
Yeah, my big thing with that is just making sure that the city's 145-year-old main drain that basically comes from around the area of grocery outlet down.
Well, I think,
Yeah,
we
no,
we
that's-
have to look at, our changing weather patterns and our climate,
Yeah.
what's happening with the
That's a-
climate, and then work on projects like this that anticipate these 30-year, weather conditions and, anyway, that anticipate things like the freeze in Texas or our overwhelmingly hot summers and all these things that are now coming in greater force. And so I would think that our climate action plan could have these action points underneath it.
I guess basically all I'm trying to go at is getting a plan together to replace our 145-year-old
Yeah, well,
storm drain
yeah,
plan. I
yeah.
mean, we can talk about climate action.
Right,
if
and I'm not
that's-
sure if that's under infrastructure or climate action.
It's,
That to me came under this preparing for the community. I
Yeah.
didn't want to
Okay.
say
Yeah,
everything,
and
which
it's-
is why I chose
All right.
Greenlee Road,
Okay.
but that was we know that they're gonna break. That is guaranteed and
Yeah,
it's
okay.
almost certain within the next 20 years. If we plan ahead,
So we're
that's our
planning
job.
for the future. Okay.
yes.
I get it.
And to be really honest, it's funny, this storm drain system should have been replaced, honestly, probably about 100 years ago. But it really was built
That's what
well.
happened last winter when everything flooded and they were kayaking, or is it last winter? or the
Yeah,
winter
2
before?
winters
And they were
ago. Yeah,
kayaking down the main street.
But it didn't get, it was being used, it was working. Parts of it have fallen down, but yeah. And it's just because they used mine doors and carriage axles, and I think there's some Model T axles holding it up too. And then slate. I've actually always wanted to go down there, but I'm not dare gonna do it. But
We wouldn't be
I
allowed.
don't have any problem with it. I just,
I wanted to go
Well-
down there too, but
figure out which one of the
I don't
bullet
like
points
closed
it comes
spaces.
under.
So we had it, just to kind of bring us back, so we had it in your objectives as find funding and develop a plan for a new storm drain system.
mhm. That's pretty measurable.
So are we okay with the consensus of that language as the first one? Find funding and develop a plan for a new storm drain system.
Look at all drain systems, more or less.
Yeah.
It's not just super
You
focused.
ready for that one, Rochelle?
Yeah.
if this council puts that as one of the priorities, that'll be the first time in over a decade that's really been pushed as a priority. I need to make that really clear, like, keep bringing it up. I know Connie and I really tried to push it at one time, but the council never wanted to hear it. So if we have that as one of our priorities, that'll be a first.
Number two, for one that I thought we might have consensus on, was formal adoption of the Greenlee Road extension as a priority for the city and TCTC. Consensus, do I have consensus? Okay, that's number two. And then number three, then we either have establish and develop a climate action plan or explore possibility of a rainwater reclamation flood control project. Okay,
Which includes investigating rainwater reclamation control project or something to that effect.
so establish a climate action plan to include
A rainwater reclamation.
a rainwater reclamation. Well, we have this storm.
Well, the
drain.
storm drains are a separate, you can put your reclamation project either under a climate action plan or under the storm drains, whichever you prefer.
This is grant funded. I better get close to the microphone. This is grant funded, correct? Okay, and there's grant funding out there for something like this, I hope, because we don't have the money unless we do. So that would be part of a storm drain and stormwater enhancement project would be this under a storm drain plan. So I
So
would think they'd be
could we,
congruent.
could we say, explore a possibility of a rainwater reclamation flood control project to include a plan for a new storm drain system?
Sure. Is that okay with you?
Again, I'm a
Again,
little deaf.
so hold on
Or
just
slow.
a second. Explore a possibility of a, hold on just a second.
And just so the council knows, and you probably know this already, Colette, but the majority of the new stormwater systems that are out there that are mandated, most of them do have rainwater collection of some sort. So because it's found we have too much asphalt and not enough
Grass.
going back into the
Dirt.
ground. Yeah.
I don't need you to repeat it, but I would.
So just so we know, so everybody's consensus with it, I'll repeat it one more time. Explore the possibility of a rainwater reclamation flood control project to include a plan for a new storm drain system.
Yes.
Nope,
Oh, thank you.
not to be obstreperous, but that's a nice plus. If we can get it, we can explore it a lot. But we have to get a new storm drain system and funding. That must be the first priority of it, because that is going to break, and then it will cost us $10 million and come right down through Main Street to block it for months. We have to get our storm drain system in. And so as part of that, great, if we can get it funding, I'm all for exploring the possibility, but I don't think we can make the one subject to the other with the storm drains.
I agree with Mark in that we need to figure out that system, that main drain system, regardless of whether we get this rainwater retention grant.
So could I invert it and say, develop a plan, find funding and develop a plan for a new storm drain system and explore the possibility of a rainwater reclamation flood control project?
Yeah.
Is that better? Is that okay?
I think that's
Councilmember
better.
Smith? Mayor Hawkins, is that okay with you?
I think that's perfect.
Okay.
Again, the majority of the money that goes out there after reading and reading and reading, you'll have these rainwater collection systems, and many of it's just to hold back the water so it doesn't flood the creek, or like we saw the back of the lower Save Mart get flooded. I mean, it's to help hold a lot of that back. So it all, I think we're all saying the same thing without saying the same thing.
We don't want our storm drains
that make sense, Morgan?
subordinate
Okay.
to a project that we'd like to do, but isn't critical to the city. It's a
Okay, so
good
that's
thing.
Find funding and
but
develop. a
anyway,
plan
it's just
for
the
a new storm drain
subordination that
system
we're-
and explore the possibility of a rainwater reclamation flood control project. Great. Number 2, we had formal adoption of the Greenlee Road extension as a priority for the city and TCTC. And number 3 we have is establish and develop a City of Sonora climate action plan. So there's a lot of things that go into the involvement of a climate action plan. And in fact, the county is undertaking this right now. And so we would want to, if the council so chooses, to look at this, we would want to work kind of in tandem with the county on this, because we are part of the county. But like Councilmember Segerstrom had stated, it involves many things. So you're looking at your energy action, you're looking at electric vehicle charging stations, you're looking at solar projects, anything under the auspices of a climate action plan. I'm sorry?
Isn't there a workshop sometime this
There
week?
is. There are community workshops coming up
Right.
with the county of Tuolumne to craft their climate action plan at this point.
It's tomorrow night at 6. That's.
Oh, I thought it was the 25th.
You
for
can
the
register
county.
for it. It's kind of hard to find on the website, but it's.
Okay. I
You
thought the
register
county's
for
was
it.
on the 25th.
There are different throughout the community.
Okay.
Oh, it's Thursday. You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's the
Thursday
29th,
night.
Thursday night. Isn't tomorrow night Thursday night?
I can't figure out what today is. I haven't known all day.
So this would be a very, it's not
So-
just climate action plan, but we would have to do the strategic plan of all of that, kind of like some of the things that we've been talking about. Do I have consensus on establish and develop a City of Sonora climate action plan? Councilmember Garaventa?
Where would funding come from?
So
Or do we have enough funding in the budget and staff time?
So it would come mostly through grants. We would have to find grants. So we don't
But-
have
and
funding
we-
in the
And
budget
there's
right now.
likelihood of getting grants?
We would have to even look at this point. I know Chris and Rochelle and I were just talking about this as we were coming into this session. Some of the low hanging fruit that potentially the city can go after here within this year, and that is probably the vehicle charging station. But when you look at a climate action plan, you've got to look at the different elements of it. And with that, the funding possibilities come along with that climate action plan. So
Okay.
it would be done in tandem.
Okay, yeah.
So
I'm just concerned that we have the funding to do it. You know,
I mean,
because otherwise we'd be taken away from something else.
I've
So-
talked to a few business owners downtown who are very conservative like myself. And they are really pushing for vehicle charging stations downtown.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's because oh, yeah, absolutely. And, you know, quite frankly, it's good business if you have dueling fuels. You have electric and gas and, you know, maybe even liquid propane, that type of thing. It makes sense to have those available in your hub city in your county. So Sonora is our hub city, so it would make complete sense.
And I mean, there's, you know, there's so much to learn about programs that people can get, you know, cheaper energy or solar or, you know, I mean, it's not all, you know, expenditure. A lot of it is that those opportunities are there that people just don't know about it. And so education is a huge part of it.
The other thing, once the city, and this isn't a plug either way, but once the city does have a formalized climate action plan, we then make ourselves available to additional grant funding to be able to fund a lot of these projects. Right now, without any type of climate action plan, it makes it very difficult for us to be competitive on the grant market. Can we get through the consensus first and then,
Yes, we will take public comments. I know Charles has his hand raised, and I promise we will come and ask for public comment. So let's get through this part and then absolutely.
so looking for consensus on establishing and develop a City of Sonora climate action plan. Mayor Hawkins,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Plummer.
Meh, but I'm waiting for details because a lot of the climate action stuff that we see involves California, for example, paying 30% more for our electricity than our neighbors and other things that are supposed to compel us to do things that our betters in Sacramento believe are good for us. So what we've talked about now, water reclamation, charging stations, I'm all in favor of that. But there are lots of aspects to what people want to compel the hoi polloi to do about climate that lower our standard of living instead of raising it. So I'm not fighting it, but I have reservations as soon as we have you start
Are you
using
nay, yay or nay?
It was May.
Is that a nay? Is that a nay?
So that's
No, that's a qualified yes. I'll support it at this point.
Okay, so I'm going to read through the objectives and then we'll take public comment. So number one is find funding and develop a plan for a new storm drain system and explore the possibility of a rainwater reclamation flood control project. Number two is formal adoption of Greenlee Road Extension as a priority for the City of Sonora and TCTC, which is Tuolumne County Transportation Council. And number three is establish and develop a City of Sonora climate action plan. Do we have consensus on these three objectives? Yes, okay, at this time, Mr. Mayor, I think we can take public comment.
Yes, so let's take public comment. Use the raise your hand feature or *9. And then, yay, Charles raised his hand.
I would like to speak in favor of the climate action plan. You know, what we do know is that the energy action plan activity that the city's been involved with for 3 years was underwritten by the Sierra Nevada Energy Watch, administered by Sierra Business Council and funded by PG&E's Public purpose program. With regard to the climate action plan, I would suggest to the council that this is, actually a way to take advantage of existing funding that's coming our way, whether it's from the state or federal government. If we're not poised to accept the grants and accept the resources that will come out of, a major new emphasis on climate action, then our, citizens will be left behind. We live in an area where energy is very expensive. We don't have cheap natural gas as an example. And if we get behind the, energy action plan with a broader climate action plan in concert with the county, then I think we'll be poised to bring as many resources as possible back to Sonora. Our tax dollars go out, but do they come back? I sure hope so through this vehicle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sagerstrom. Is there anyone else?
At this time, I do not see any more hands.
Okay, so we'll bring it back to the council.
So at this time, Mr. Mayor, we have established your 5 goals along with 3 objectives underneath each of those goals. The next step is for myself and your facilitator, Morgan Gacci, to develop a strategic plan that lays out strategically how we intend to accomplish these objectives and the timeline associated with those objectives. So we will be bringing that back as soon as we can back to the council for formal adoption of that strategic plan and going forward with those objectives.
So is this like you'll bring it back in 2 months? Or are we going to have another meeting that's going to go a couple hours?
I don't think we need an actual special meeting for this. This would come as an agendized item on a regular meeting.
Okay.
Hopefully, I would think no longer than a month. We would get that in front of you. So let's shoot for the first meeting in April to have that strategic plan in front of the council for formal adoption. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to get all the kinks worked out with what the climate action plan and all that's going to look like, but it will be a strategic plan that lays out the priorities, the timeline, and so forth of your objectives.
Excellent.
And we are actually, we're actually 30 minutes early. Good job, guys.
That's so. Does any council members or anyone else want to give any kind of reports or anything? I mean, I'm like ecstatic that we actually, because I'm sorry, but the first meeting was just crappy. And this one, I mean, I'll just be honest with everybody. It was just crappy. And I think we're finally starting to learn how to work together. And I think that's good because honestly, we all have different backgrounds, but this is very good. So, the city is moving in a new direction, but not necessarily away from the old direction. Just, different people are taking over. I mean, a different generation is taking over finally. So, it takes a lot of work, and there's what John Mellencamp said it. There was nothing more sad or glorious than a generation changing hands. And it's really, it really is. It's, we get to see it now. So, yeah.
So the other thing that staff would like to do as well is when we would like to be able to make sure that on our website that the public identifies the goals, we have the objectives mapped out, and when you formally adopt the strategic plan, then we'll have that along on the website. I don't want to inundate the website, but these are definitely things that the public need to be aware of.
Absolutely. So,
all right.
Did anyone have anything else? I thought I saw Colette's hand. No? Oh, okay. Okay, so I guess we will call the meeting.
Just a second then. I mean, there was one indispensable man in the formation of this country, and today is his birthday, George Washington. So I'm surprised that we're on a President's Day, that we're working, but I'm glad we are. Anyway, that is something pretty important, and without George Washington, we would not be the same people we are today.
Heck yes. Okay.
All right.
Call it over at 3:34. Thank you, everyone.